and they're going to take everything you have in the name of the common good.
Hey everybody, you can't see me, I'm invisible. You can't see me. Oops. So there we go. So here is me and Fox
True.
streaming. We're cheating, we're using the technology within technologies. I'm using a different streaming service to run through my stream program because I like to cheat. So, everybody out there hear us alright? I hope you can. Joe's in the chat. The R2 D2 Life is in the chat. He said hashtag false advertisement because it's after 7 o'clock. Oh well, that's what happens. These are live shows. This isn't network television now. This is more like, you know, Bozo the Clown show, but for the internet. It's just how it is.
You're not that old, Doug, though. You didn't watch Bozo when he was on.
I did. I watched Bozo.
What? Really?
Early 90s. Bozo was still on. Probably.
Oh, yeah. Not around here, but...
We would come to Grandpa's and he had satellite, so we'd watch it on WGN on his satellite. So that's how we got to watch it. I loved it. I thought it was the greatest thing ever.
I've watched old episodes since. Once they started putting that kind of stuff on DVD, my dad was feeling nostalgic and he bought one of those DVDs because he wanted to show it to us.
Oh, that's cool.
But by that time, I was like in high school. DVDs were a thing.
See, I don't remember. I don't know exactly when it ended or anything, or if, you know, how long it went. I just knew one day we just, you know, how one day you just kind of stop watching it. I guess I'd just grown up, and then I forgot about it until years later.
I have a big echo when I talk, apparently.
It's probably where I've got my speakers turned up too loud because I am really dumb. That should fix everything.
My favorite show when I was a little kid like that was Mr. Rogers, by far.
Yeah, I did like Mr. Rogers quite a bit. But Mr. Rogers was free. We could watch it every day.
Yeah, PBS, baby. What's crazy now is it was on there for like 50 years. Like I was on that channel, and now it's not on there anymore.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That should always be on TV for free for children to watch.
I think that was his intention. And I think now that it's a pay service or you got to buy DVDs and things, I think that's antithetical to what he wanted when he argued for things like VCRs being around and available for people.
So apparently, I found a stash of comic books. I had some overprints of Vestry, but I thought I sent them all to Skinny when he was distributing the book. But apparently, I've got a couple of welding covers. I've got a couple of the regular covers of #1. I've got a stack. Well, I mean, it's not a huge stack, but I've got some Napalm Brothers issue 1 with the ash can. That disappeared when I held it up. It was like magic. Went into the void. I've got 2 copies of the Brad cover of Psychotron. So I'm actually hoping that we can get some people to go and back while we're streaming and talking about things and stuff. I've also got a couple of Psychotron CDs here. But we're trying to reach out a little bit, maybe get some other people to back the book, give them free stuff. I always heard people liked free stuff. I mean, I always did, but I don't know.
You said something earlier on Twitter that was interesting, which is basically people value that which they pay for.
Yeah.
And when Jeff Potts wrote his book as his pseudonym, let's see if I can. Right there, that one. Not that book, but he wrote the first book, The Revenant in the Tomb. He tried to give it away for free and nobody wanted it. So then he put it up for sale and he actually sold the copies.
We did that back in the day with, I did my 2-hour introspective over my musical journey. We did that back in the day. We'd have demo CDs or whatever, and it seemed like people were more likely to take our demo CDs if we charged them $1 instead of giving them away.
It's just crazy. And the thing about digital comics, I was thinking about this a lot today after I wouldn't call it a rant, but because it wasn't a rant, but I posted a lot today about comics and marketing and a lot of things. And one of the things I was thinking about was how hard it is to get people to go to a free digital comic because nobody wants to read digital comics, especially if they're long. Webtoons is the first thing ever where people will actually read through comics on their phone completely, it seems like. And before that, catching up with a webcomic or reading through a webcomic was just brutal. It's not a fun experience. And the Webtoons app kind of solved that a little bit in that we've all gotten used to scrolling and it keeps our attention. But I've heard that Webtoons isn't even doing that hot now because their business model is not working for them in terms of money. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's what I've heard.
Well, I know, I really like using the Shonen Jump app.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can take my phone to work with me and, read whatever I want. You can scroll through and everything.
Right.
And, I don't know if they do well with that, but I was almost thinking earlier, we were talking about doing things in installments, like Shonen Jump, like a 10-page installment. I just wonder if you could talk people into downloading an app and paying either a monthly thing or having your digital comics on there that they could buy to read.
So that is apparently what that Global Comics is going to be doing. I believe they either have or are going to have an app, and then they will either have where people can buy them on an individual basis, or where they can subscribe, I think, to the entire thing, sort of like a subscription service, and then if they read your comic, you get some of that money. I don't know what the percentages are.
That's cool.
Well, but
it's probably
hypothetically, if you're putting on good stuff, people will read it.
I'd say it works in a way like Spotify does, where you get so much, And I've actually made like $2 off Spotify last year.
Hey, that's $2 you didn't have otherwise.
Exactly. I had a guy get in an argument with me talking about how Spotify was ripping him off and all this stuff, and I'm like, you've listed your music on a service. You don't play any shows. You don't do anything. All you do is put it online and tell people to go listen to it. If you get paid anything for that, it sounds like it's a win-win.
Yeah. That's the thing that really irritates me about some of these people trying to make independent comic books, and they're like, well, I should not have to front any money.
Yeah.
I should just be able to crowdfund it and then raise all the money to pay the artists and print the books and not have any money out of my pocket. Well, that's the first time in the world that anything like that could ever happen, because you'd have to take a loan out. Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, when they made Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they took money out of their own pocket, a tax refund, and then they borrowed money from Eastman's uncle, and that's how they afforded to print the first run. There was no crowdfunding. And so the idea now that like you're just obligated to have success, and well, I'm not going to do it if it costs me money.
Yeah.
It's like, well, then I guess you're not committed to getting your book out there, having people read your stuff, or any of those things. You're just interested in, I guess, making money. It's like
They think it's a get rich quick type deal. They're just going to throw an idea out and they're going to make $1 million and they can print a couple books, and
right.
that's just not how it works. I compare everything to music because that's what I know.
Right.
When we started out, we didn't just expect people to like show up and listen to us or give us money. We had to rent places, we had to practice, we had to buy decent gear. Then you had to go out and promote. When I was a kid, man, we'd sneak into the library in high school and print as many copies as we could get away with of our flyers, and then hang them at the library in town or at Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
The indie comics is the same way. Of course, this is a digital landscape, but you've got to promote your book.
Almost knocked over my painting.
And it's the same with, like, you've got to have an investment. You've got to have either the money to record a demo, or you've got to have the musical instruments. It's the same way with a comic. You've got to invest in it. You've got to invest in anything if you want somebody to take it seriously.
I think that's part of the reason why hip hop has become so popular, is because somebody can just use GarageBand and make a beat, or download a beat, or buy a beat from somebody and rap over it, rather than have to learn how to use an instrument.
Exactly.
And I have music up on Bandcamp that I made digitally. I don't have any instruments. I don't have any musical capabilities. And yet I put up music on Bandcamp that people could buy right now if they wanted. I don't think they should, but they should listen to it because it's funny. Most of it's meant for a laugh. But
well, in the chat, Jolo says, I myself don't do digital. Call me old-fashioned, but I'd rather have a physical copy in hand. The R2D2 Life says, I'm old. I will never appreciate digital comics. However, I understand trying to reach others. Just don't forget the old people and do print as well. I agree. Man, I honestly don't even want to offer digital comics in the crowd fund. I'd prefer everybody just buy the physical comics. But I know that there's people that can't afford to pay like $25 shipping to ship it overseas. I wish that there was, like I said, and if Global Comics is doing that, that might be the way to go. Which I was going to look into that, and then I don't know, I had a stroke or something. But something like that would really help. I don't know why I forgot about Global Comics. I was promoting Dan's comic on there a while back. The race car one. That just seems like a really good idea. I know, like, Skinny sells his book on Amazon, which I'd like to do that as well, but I would prefer to have, like, more, like, maybe this collection of issues 1 and 2, with the extra content. That might be something I put up on there.
right.
But I just don't want to do single issues. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like there would be enough money in printing it, to justify even messing with it.
I think it's what Skinny was saying earlier, is he's basically going to put everything up like that. And I think that is probably the best way to go, is just put the content up anywhere you possibly can. And then promote and send people to that content. One of the things that I just do not understand how these people are so short-sighted is, I mean, I'll just say their name. I tweeted at Graham Nolan because I was interested in his latest comic, Ghosts of Matacumbe Key. It's Florida themed. I like this sort of tropical theme, and I have some ideas of my own like that. I thought, oh, I'd like to see what Graham Nolan does with that kind of thing. And he said, oh, everything's available as an add-on, and I didn't know that, so I went through and I clicked through and I thought, oh man, $25 for this comic, that the Ghost of Matacumbe Key, and I imagine the other ones are that. No, they were $40 and $50, and there's 4 of them that tie in with that comic, so that have built up to this comic, and they all tie into it apparently. And it was like $200, so you're looking at around $200 to catch up and have this one. And I thought, it's just, to me, it just seems short-sighted. I have nothing against the guy,
Yeah,
but
who's going to drop that kind of money?
I can't justify that. I've missed out on those things. So you're hindering the new customer.
Yeah,
and
agree.
So I understand that the catch-up tiers have to cost some money. Obviously, they have to cost something, and you want to cover your costs. But if I could point somebody, hey, you want to catch up? Absolutely. Go on Amazon. You can get all 3 books for, $50 or something, and you're caught up. It's like, well, I'm only making $5 of profit off that. Well, that's $5 I didn't have.
Yeah.
And I think not just that guy, but a lot of these guys who are looking to have a cushion from leaving comics as leaving the mainstream, so-called mainstream, and getting into crowdfunding, they're looking for as much profit as possible. But at the same time, they're talking about how the future of comics and how they want people to read comics again, and they're trying to do all these things. It's like, you've just made it impossible for anybody who's young, who's not already somebody who was aware of your existence, who was a fan of you, to jump in.
Yeah. I'm going to catch up with the chat here real quick. The R2D2 Life says, when I support a crowdfund, honestly, part of the reason I support a lot of times is to support and appreciate the person making the book in addition to the book itself. Yeah, I agree. That's actually, I'm to the point where I actually had to quit because I was buying books I cared nothing about, but I liked the people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's cool to do that, but, in Skinny, what I was getting at Skinny was, I don't know, and then Fox said something, told me to rethink it. My only thing with, I don't have to make a ton of money if I put it on Amazon. It just scares me to put a book on Amazon and it go out. I like to look at what I'm shipping out. You know what I mean? I don't want somebody to get one of my books and it be subpar or anything and them judge me off the Amazon book. Maybe I'm being just too picky. I don't know.
There is a valid concern, the quality control of something, but the trade-off is higher prices. Shipping it yourself, and you can't take a loss on that.
Yeah.
And the reason why, what Skinny said on Twitter earlier, is true, is they print. If you buy it in Australia off of Amazon, it prints in Australia.
Yeah.
And so you're not fronting that shipping cost, and you don't have to price the book high to make at least something off of it. And that's the trade-off, is more people can get access to it.
Well, Skinny was talking about it before, and I kind of like his idea about the Amazon book just being a plain book. If people want to support the crowdfunds, that's where I want to give them the special stuff, like the glow in the dark and the holograms and the Jello pudding pops and the kids. put all that on the crowd fund.
You're basically saying this is a premium book. It's like if there's some of these authors. I have the series that I read of fantasy books by an author named Will White, and his books are all they're on digital. You can buy them on Amazon Print on Demand, Audible versions, and then there's also he did a crowdfund where he's printing hardback nice books, and that's what crowdfunded comics used to be, is collections of stuff that was already done.
Yeah.
And at the time when I started looking at crowdfunding comics, I've got some over here that they're collections of web comics. They were already done. The person had put the time and effort into, the money into making it already. And then they're like, hey, would you like to have this all in one location and a physical book? Well, then back this crowdfunding campaign. And then it was only when all the I don't know who was the first ones to do it. I know there was people like Jimmy Palmiotti and some of these others that would also crowdfund a comic, and then it would be done through Image Comics and things. But then once the sort of whenever you guys started, that whole groundswell happened, it kind of seemed like it shifted from back in the day where the comic was already complete, already done because it was a web comic or it was an old comic that was being recollected or something. And it, I don't know. I don't know that it's for the better.
Well, when it shifted was when we had people like EVS and Mitch Brettweiser and former pros come in and want all that money up front before delivering a product. And they encouraged other people to do the same thing. I remember listening to streams and it was like, you don't have to finish the book. You should, throw your idea out there. And they were saying, and then they're telling people, you're funding people's dreams. Like that was some big thing. I dream about a lot of stuff. I dream about owning a machine gun, but I don't expect to crowdfund it.
Right.
People, I don't know. That was a big shift though, because a lot of people that started indie comics now, it was a lot smaller place until they jumped in there. Because even think about it, a lot of people that jumped in because of those guys and don't like those guys and left that little group, just kind of moved to the other group. There's just an influx of tons of people making comic books now.
I came after pretty much after all this drama had happened, and I'm not a part of any of these groups. I gravitated towards people that I like, but they're all in these separate spots, like, and it just because I like them as an individual, but the backstabbing and all that nonsense that apparently happened. Just dumb.
Okay, I just got a text from work.
What, are they trying to get you to come in?
No, something crazy's going on.
It's been so long since I used this paint that that it's all stuck on there, and I've got to get a wrench to try to get it off. See, what's the chat saying?
Well,
If you don't want to work, sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to have to step out for a minute. So
Okay, well, I'll talk. I'll do the chat stuff. Skinny says, if you don't want to work towards your dream, that's your problem. Well, that's the thing. I see these people and like, well, and I got to keep my prices high, and I can't possibly spend my own money to crowdfund something, not to crowdfund something, to produce a product. I mean, how do you think business in the real world works? Apparently, I should have just used my teeth in the first place. And I'm astonished by people that don't. I guess it's because there's a crossover between people who are not businessmen or have any kind of sense, not even businessmen, but any kind of sense for what it costs or what it takes to produce anything, and comic book fans. People that want to produce comic books. There seems to be a crossover between those people, and so they don't have an idea of, well, it actually takes money to make money. Well, I don't want to spend the time to make a product or spend the money to advertise it. I don't want to spend the time it takes to advertise the product or get it out there or figure out what works for me. I don't want to hustle to get the comics done in a timely fashion. Oh, R2D2 for life. Yeah, do they think Walt Disney hopped on Indiegogo? He had like 3 companies that failed before he founded the other one that actually worked out. There are so many options of books now in crowdfunding. You can pick and choose a few folks you want to support and have plenty of books, more than you can afford. That part is much better now. Yeah, you can sort of choose what you want. What's interesting to me is when I look at somebody's book and I think, oh yeah, I'd like to take a chance on this, but it's a lot of money. And I'd rather just stick with what I know. And that's what's happening to a lot of people. There was a big influx of cash. Everybody was doing well. The economy was good. And crowdfunding was hot. But when people start to leave, people get burned out on a product that's built on loyalty rather than quality and quantity. We've seen what happens. Anyone starting a business involves sweat equity. Getting a business loan for a business requires that you show you're willing to invest your own time and money into making it work. Yeah, absolutely. Are you willing to lose on the deal? To not make a profit? To build up the comics? Or the restaurant or whatever it is? That's the nice thing about crowdfunding is that it's not a loan. It's money that you have, and you print the. People are giving you the money up front for the books, and if you can get enough to get the print run done, well, that's fantastic. However, the trade-off is you better produce it, and you better produce it quick, or you're not going to continue to grow. I see the reasons why people like Tonic Mole and Skinny and the iconic comics people, why they are seemingly doing well is because they've actually produced books. And I don't think you can sustain it without having new avenues of growth. Not having good relationships with people who are going to print those comics and put them in stores or go overseas with them, or don't have your books priced so high that you can't get new customers. Because customers fall out. There's people that will stop reading it who bought it before, and they're just, I'm kind of done with this. I'm not as interested in this book as I once was. I'm not as willing to shell out the money for it. And so they don't. We're also not here for celebrity status or money. I think that's a key is it fun for you to do? Are you enjoying it? If you're losing an arm and a leg on it, stop. But if you're paying for it, if a person is paying for it, they're enjoying it, and they're not losing any money on it, well then that's kind of fun. You know, you make a couple $100 a year or something that you didn't have before. That's great too. If you don't have anything to show for or to show in the crowdfunding you're making, the backers bear all the risk without showing any investment of time and effort and hustle, if not money, and risk of your own. Most of us want to make more just so we can put that towards more books. I think there's a lot of people. I think the people who are actually producing, yes. It is helpful when you are somebody like a Tonic Mole who can draw the book himself. Therefore, the only investment outside of getting the books printed is your time. And if you have somebody do a cover, or you had Jim Lawson do that backup story, but predominantly he's spending his time drawing the comic instead of doing other things, and that's what's
Sorry about that.
funny.
I get a text from work saying that nothing was done when I was there Friday night. So it's like, well, I don't know what to tell you. I did everything, and why am I hearing about it a whole 20? It's more than 24 hours later. I got off work Saturday morning, and the boss was supposed to be there last night. So why am I hearing about what happened Friday or Saturday morning right now? If he was there last night, aggravates me. Anytime anything's going halfway decent, somebody at work has to wreck something for me. Sorry about that. What was you guys talking about?
Oh, we were just talking about the sort of the same topic. I think I might have missed Joe's comment here. I back quite a few CG books, but also back a lot of books from people outside of the group as well. I buy books based on if I feel I could get into it. Yeah, I think that's the case. There's people that I like whose books I just don't back because I'm not interested in them. And I didn't come in to this to be loyal to anyone in terms of buying their books just based on loyalty. I'll be loyal to them in that I'll continue to be their friend and continue to be around them and interact with them.
Yeah, there's a couple people I really like, but I'm just not into their books.
That's fine. I hope that there's an audience for it, and I want them to do well. But
yeah, well, really, I don't have any wish for anybody to honestly fail. I do wish some people would just mind their own business and work on their books and their projects. I think it's a little insane to think that indie books are going to save the industry because indie books are not part of the industry. And I also think talking about a community all the time. Community is the most overused word.
yeah, it's really of the times, I think.
It is, because everybody is like, oh, the gun community, the gay community, the Christian community. No, that's not how it is. We're still individuals at heart, and even though you can't just generalize a whole bunch of people, I just get so sick and tired of these people streaming going, we've got to do this in the community. It's like, just, if you want to do something, if you're all about community, then promote other people's books. Don't tell me everything's wrong and people are doing bad and we've got to save the industry. Promote somebody's books. I think a lot of stuff, like I watch a lot of gun YouTubers, and a lot of them get really political and they're like, the community. And they'll even overlook, like there's one guy, he's straight up a liberal Satanist, but it's okay because he has a gun. He flags other content creators. He flags Christian content creators. He is totally against, Christians having any kind of rights. He's against everything. But no, it's okay because he shoots guns on his YouTube channel. That's just, it's not cool. At some point, we're all not on the same side, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the same way about the comic community, but I'm not going to try to tear anybody down. I'm just going to leave them alone.
Yeah.
R2D2 license. I don't think you can save the industry through indie comics, but you can save the art form of comics. Exactly.
Well, the comic book industry, I just, as if it's this monolith. This is a thing that bothers me, is the American comic book industry is totally irrelevant. It's the things that it produced 40 years ago or more, those things might have some relevance. And occasionally there's a comic book that gets adapted to something, and the relevance isn't that it was adapted to something. But in terms of the industry, I mean, that industry has died a death a long, long time ago. It died so many years ago and is so irrelevant. And it has to do with the model. I was thinking about this today. The reason why, one of the reasons why manga is able to produce so many the books at these cheap levels and to put them out and to get people to only have to spend $10, $20 for a big book. Like I posted this one. Not everybody's into manga, and I get that. But this Dragon Quest book, this is from the 80s, and there's multiple volumes of this. Why? Because somebody worked their butt off years ago to produce this in black and white in an industry that was sustainable and was based on a meritocracy. And so there's all kinds of content. There's so much, and it's continually getting produced. And new concepts are getting introduced, and new books are coming out. And then those books are being adapted into anime, and there's this whole, that's an industry. But the comic book industry, I mean, the sales are so abysmal compared to what they used to be. And they should have changed 20 years ago. They should have been looking into new models.
Yeah.
Not when it's so bad that most of the comic book shops are closing and there's, people are getting canceled and all stuff. It's much too late.
I agree. R2D2 says you can't replace 80 years of iconic heroes in any short space of time. The persons in control and power of those characters are the only ones that might could, but they are destroying anything left. Well, see, that's one reason I think that the MCU is doing so poorly. You've got, a ridiculous amount of classic stories they could adapt into movies and tons of characters, but instead they're skipping all that and trying to create something new, adapting newer stories or newer ideas, and so they lose a lot of the classic fans. Eric says mainstream comics survive solely through merchandising.
Mm-hmm. No, it's interesting. I've been thinking a lot about adaptions and how, because they like an anime, when you watch an anime show, it's the same as the comic book. That's not always the case. The old Full Metal Alchemist was made before some of these other shows that were made before the comics were really far. They kind of switched up and made the endings a little different. But so often they're the same thing. And then you have, like you were saying, the movies and stuff. And so people go and they like this movie, they go to the comic book shop, and the thing that they're seeing at the comic book shop does not match what they saw at the movie. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to think, well, what if we make a comic book that's based off of these movies, where it's the same universe, the stories that you're telling are in between the movies or something like that, so that when they go to the comic book shop, they see, oh, that's Thor, and it looks just like Hemsworth. This looks just like Chris Evans, and they're seeing what they saw in the movie theater. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that might be of interest, and then print it cheaply. It doesn't have to be in color in a periodical every month, but do it up front. Get somebody to get a style down and get people who can ape a style and produce it and have it out for when somebody watches the movie and they go to Target or Walmart. and there it is, the same size as a manga, sitting next to the. It's like, if I can figure out something that could have been done to actually sell comics, but instead they went to the store, they went to the comic book shop because they don't want to piss off these comic book shops because that's their only industry. That's the only people that are selling them. They don't sell them at the grocery store anymore.
Yeah, and see,
They
that's a
don't sell 'em
mistake.
anything.
That's what Dave said. You took them out of the grocery stores and the gas stations. Comic shops. When I was a kid, you could go to Walmart and you could buy comic books. You could buy comic books at the grocery store. When you went to the comic shop, it was to buy the collector's books. You wanted to either get the graphic novels or you wanted to get like some book you had when you was a kid, or you was looking for back issues. It wasn't to buy new comics. And trying to sell new comics out of a shop like that, it's bad. It's not a good idea.
I heard something the other day, and I don't know if this is true or not in the history of comics, but they said that somebody was saying that one of the reasons they took them out of stores was because the comic book shops complained, and that was where the bulk of the business was coming from in the early 90s when they took them out of the stores. And so by the time I had money, comics were out of the grocery store. They were not there. I never saw a comic book outside of a used bookstore we went to occasionally. I never even saw a comic book.
I think
Other than Archie, or if there was a collection of them at the library.
Yeah. I think the reason they came out of stores were because of the gimmicky things that Marvel and DC were doing at the time, like the death of Superman and stuff. I think the comic shops wanted exclusivity on stuff like that, and on image number ones and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Because how special is it if you can go to the grocery store and get the number one new super book?
Right. It's just so short-sighted, and the industry has been short-sighted since the comic book shop started. Basically, in the late 70s and early 80s, it was over because they went from being. Sales had diminished by that point, and there was some times when both the companies were in some dire straits. But by that time, it was over. Once the industry imploded the first time, they never adapted and they never moved on to a new model. And you look at something like manga, and why did it survive? Well, because it was selling huge copies of weekly books or monthly books, not just weekly, but they also have monthly books. They have different books that come out at a regular period, and they're serialized, and they're like that, but you get a huge book, and it's cheap, and they sell enough to make it to make it worth it. But the American comic book industry just didn't adapt at all. They didn't change, and it just boggles my mind.
Well, there for a little bit they were having it really good, and I think that's what
They sell enough to.
I'm trying to copy. Oh, what am I doing? Hiroshi Paradox. I'm trying to send him the link, and I'm doing a really bad job at it.
Eric Kent says first mainstream direct comics were like Teen Titans and Legion. You had to go to the shops in the 80s, and then Dark Knight and Watchmen hit. And let's be realistic. The reason why something like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles worked is because of the direct market. That's obvious. There's reasons why those things were successful, and it had to be at that time. So it's not to say that it could only, that's the only reason that it died, or it was better before there was a comic book shop. It's just to say that they didn't adapt to the changes well, and they couldn't have known that the model that would pay off for them was to import comics from Japan and to produce comics that way. They couldn't have known because comics hadn't been brought over from Japan yet.
Sorry, I'm mildly distracted.
No, it's fine.
Hmm. Joe says, I remember this. They used to have huge summer story arcs like the death of Superman or X-Men Fatal Attraction, where Wolverine was almost killed when Magneto ripped out his skeleton. Yeah, I remember that. In the what DC had, what is it they had? Bloodlines or something one year, and it crossed over all the Batman stories and stuff.
And they had the one where Bane breaks his back, which I bought they printed the big trade paperback collection, thick one color, and it supposedly collected all the relevant comics for Nightfall.
But it's missing some, isn't it?
Yeah, well, so you get to the point where they find out that his name is Bane. They find out who he is. I think they see him before that, but then they don't know who he is, and they're trying to find out who he is. And then it happens in some other comic where Robin's like, "Oh, as you know, Batman, I found out that his name is Bane when I fought Killer Croc." Well, what book was that in?
See, you were talking about that. I have that comic. I don't know if it's in. I've got the collections, but I've got my collections are split up in different books. Like it's not the whole big thing. I've got Nightfall and then the other two parts. It's all split up, but it has that story you're talking about in it because Robin fights Killer Croc in the sewers, and I think Bane shows up out of nowhere and just like beats up Killer Croc. And I remember reading that story.
I don't think it's in there. Now, I may be wrong, and I just missed it or something, but I flipped back and checked it, and it wasn't in there.
I've had other collections that I've read that's done the same thing, though. They just skip. It's like they just didn't want to put this random Robin book in there or something, or you know what I mean?
That's you can understand why they did the things at the time, but that it's so hard for them to collect them now. So like they couldn't just take and print books at manga size and put them on the shelf because of the way they made the comics. People don't want them. They're hard to read. You can't read them all the way through. But you know what you can read all the way through? Dragon Ball. Freaking JoJo, Sailor Moon. These things were meant to be read serialized by one person writing a continuous story, and it worked. But the way they produced comics in America, they couldn't have foreseen these things. I recognize that what I'm talking about is hindsight, but they could have changed things at some point.
I can do infinite stories forever about Lone Wolf, as long as I don't expect it to be a continuity. It's kind of like watching Star Trek: The Next Generation. There's different seasons, but it's not a day-to-day show. If you watched episode 2 and then you watch episode 3, they never reference that that's episode 3. Remember when you used to watch a show on TV and you might watch it completely out of order because you just catch it here and there? You never knew most of the time.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
And comics should be the same way. You should be able to do a million Batman stories. If you want them to be continuous, if you got an arc you want to do, you can do a 12-issue arc. But that doesn't mean that the next year in the comic books people have to be older or time has to go anywhere. You can just look at one frame of time in these stories. Like, I think where Batman messed up is, I think you should either have a Batman story or a Batman and Robin story. You don't need the Bat family. I think the Bat family is the stupidest thing that's ever happened. You don't need multiple Robins. Maybe you could do the Nightwing thing. Whatever. But having multiple Robins and all this stuff kind of had to make them admit that time moved on somewhat. See, I like the way they went back and they did Batman Year 1. They did Batman Year 1, but that's just a story. It's a one-off story. You know, the Killing Joke was...
I think that's the way it needs to be treated now, is just to do individual volumes like that and stop worrying about continuity because it's too late.
Yeah.
The industry was dominated by these characters that have continued for 100 years almost. It's like, and they weren't created by just one person. It's dozens and dozens of people that have written these books by now. and it's not a continuous story. So why are we pretending like it is? Give people the chance to make something good, and it's just their version or their this, because you can't fix it at this point. It's too late, in my opinion. A lot of manga still have multiple people working on it, main artists on the figures, artists on buildings, and so on. Absolutely. But there's one driving force, right? They are having, there's multiple artists working on it, and that they might be doing the backgrounds or secondary figures or something, but there's one person doing the layouts, the breakdowns, working with the editor the vast majority of the time. And so it's still a production line, but they get it out quicker on a more regular basis. It's in black and white. They're not expected to have the additional cost of color printing and all of this other stuff. And there's just so much of it being produced that American comics, when I say that, I mean the big two, so-called, they just can't hope to compete with that.
We got Hiroshi Paradox in here with us.
What up?
What's going on, man? Drop some mad science on us.
Well, I don't know. I had a lot of thoughts, but I don't know where to jump in and start now. But it's just, I don't know. I'll start a lot of really long Twitter rants about stupid things that I see as an outsider in comics industry, whether it's mainstream or the indies and crowdfunders who come out of mainstream. But then I just get too worked up and write up these really long things that won't fit on Twitter and never post them. But it feels like the comics industry or community or whatever, the mainstream industry for certain, likes to put the value in everything but the actual comics. Mm-hmm. So they want to do all these, it's all about all the alternate covers. It's all about the gimmicks and all the way too involved continuity and crossovers, so they can try to trick you into buying a dozen titles that you don't want to read just to follow one story. And that's part of what makes it so hard to follow, because you can't just get in there and go from start to finish. You have to hunt down all the different pieces that are hidden in this big labyrinth of titles. And then it's everything. They put the value in everything but the actual comic. And then, because the industry is such a mess, they want to guilt you into being responsible for making the industry survive, even though they're not doing anything. The industry is not providing you anything that you want, but they're making it your responsibility to keep the companies in business, to keep shops. Yeah.
You're not going to the shop. You're not doing your part. Oh, make sure you order this from your local shop. Don't buy it on Amazon. Well, Amazon got a 50% discount if I pre-order it on Amazon.
And so, like we were saying earlier, this isn't going to save the industry. It's like, well, do we really need to save the industry as everyone's defining the industry now? Because, it's all about, even like you were saying how, or maybe you weren't saying this, but even like, oh, we got to make sure we're keeping shops in business. Yeah, I don't want the shops, people who put their money into building a business to go under. But a lot of the stuff that, everyone wants to do to keep the shops alive are not beneficial to the creators. So it's like, you creators need to take the hit for the shops because we need to keep the industry alive. It's like, maybe we should all focus on, hey, I'm making my own business out of making a comic, and let's figure out how to make my business survive and stop worrying about the whole industry.
Right.
Well, real quick, I just want to say, the next person that backs Lone Wolf on a physical tier, I'm going to give you this pack of comics right here. That's Vestry 1, the Weldon cover. You get the Brad Psychotron. You get Napalm Brothers, the Ash Cans from Napalm Brothers, and a Psychotron CD. You get all this, and I'll send it to you within the next few days. You don't have to wait till the campaign's over. All you do is you back the book and tag me on Twitter and say, "Hey Doug, I just backed the book." It's got to be a physical tier though. You get the physical tier, and I'll send you all this stuff. Now back to our previous conversation. Sorry about that, guys. It's a giveaway stream, and I haven't offered to give anything away yet.
I think you're right. This is what I think. Some people they're looking at the old models or the crowdfunding model, and they're thinking like, "Well, this has got to work. You know, what do I need to do to get this to work for me?" And the issue is that they're looking at it as everybody else has done it, rather than how do I make it work for me? What's the model for me? Because there is no industry way that it's going to be done.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, especially since I was following a lot of the webcomics guys when they were doing podcasts about how they were making a living.
Yeah, me too.
And when they started doing crowdfunding, 8 years before any of the mainstream superhero comics guys decided that they invented crowdfunding comics a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I forgot where I was going before I started ranting about that.
Oh, just the web comic people and what they were doing, I assume, is what you were going to...
What did you say last? I'm sorry, I've been a little sick. So
that it's different for everybody.
Yes,
the
okay.
The model is different for everybody.
The thing, everybody who's coming out of mainstream comics, they're, still taking all of this stuff from mainstream comics, all the ideas of how everything should work. And a lot of them, what they define comics as is, again, it's not the actual comic art story, art form. It's all of the packaging. It's like, comics it's not a comic if you're not going through a comic shop. It's not a comic for all these, if it doesn't fall into all the superficial aspects of it. So we have to do all these, we have to go through all these systems and processes that haven't been working for the mainstream guys in shops, but we still got to keep doing that instead of figuring out, like you said, hey, how can I build my business around my comic and figure out how to sell it instead of trying to keep following the mainstream model that isn't working, industry model, whatever.
Yeah, I had a former industry pro. I was on his show one time, and he told me that Lone Wolf would never do well because it didn't look like his kind of book, because I didn't have the Marvel style. I needed to make it look like everybody else's book, and I needed to hire this guy to do the colors, and if I'd save up $1,000, he could do like a cover for me, and all this would make the book a real comic book.
It needs to be like it needs to be like every other book in a shop that isn't selling.
Exactly.
It needs to be like all those Image comics in the dollar bin.
Yeah. Exactly.
In the dollar bin. Yeah. You know how I got all the Image comics that I own? From the clearance rack at the used store.
Yeah, you find them in the dollar bin in any comic shop.
Yep.
And why are people trying to emulate those books more than any others?
Yeah.
That's
because those are the people because they were popular for this segment of people, this age group of people that have the money right now to spend, and the ones that are making the art, that was when they were at their highest point.
We got Skinny in here with us.
Hey. I heard folks talking about how much the industry was like poop in the bed, and I was like, oh, yeah.
I like to poop the bed.
It just amazes me. Like, you guys haven't really touched it, but talked about it, but like how like all of these different like really skilled people, really skilled artists and even writers are like, they are so in love with the idea of working for Marvel or DC despite the onslaught of controversies that we have all seen, like from Alan Moore getting screwed over, even with what's his name when Bob Kane, quote unquote, made Batman with
Bill Finger.
Bill Finger, and then for a while Bob just completely stole everything, and then finally it came out that that people are like, well, yeah, Finger had something to do with it, and then Finger's like, well, we just ripped off the Shadow.
Right.
And
That's the-
it
yeah.
just amazes me that people line up basically to just jump into this meat grinder of corporatism.
Because
Yeah.
that's comics to them. Think like I like some of these people. I don't want this to sound like I just hate all of these people. It's not true. I like a lot of these people. But they're all 50 to 65-year-old men. I think Chuck Dixon's probably on the older end in his 60s. And they're people who they long for the comics in the 80s, in the early 90s when they were at their high point. That's what they want. They want that again. And that's comics to them. That is comic books to them. They
Yeah.
they didn't have to come along after that, like Skinny and I's generation, and try to find comics or
Well,
go
I'm
and
not
look for them.
saying like Dixon and them are necessarily like a part of the problem either. I'm just saying it's just strange that people are still just flocking to this industry that eats people alive.
Like, so I've been listening because I'm always looking for stuff to listen to when I'm doing things, to a couple of like YouTube shows about people bitching about comics industry all the time. And it just, as somebody who didn't really grow up and didn't like superheroes, Marvel and DC, was never really into that. um, when I hear them talking about, mainstream stuff versus creator owned comics, and they talk like creator owned is such a bad thing. It's like, oh, that's the third string garbage. If you're not writing for a corporate character or property, you're wasting your time. And I'm like, I don't get that. It's like, for Superman and Batman, who have a million different creators, everything that you're reading is kind of fan fiction.
It
It's
really
just
is.
official fan fiction because it's just, oh, we're gonna let this new guy decide to write whatever crazy ass story about these characters.
Like I was talking about the Bat family. Somebody
Yeah.
gets some stupid idea. Let's add another Bat person. Let's get a baby with bat wings on his head. Oh, it's
Whereas,
canon now.
yeah, and if you have a creator-owned thing, it's like, well, here's a creator writing their story. And it's gonna have some kind of cohesiveness to it. It's gonna be a story and not just, you got to keep this character going for 80 years and have a million different people write their take, but then we need to stick so close to continuity. Every crazy ass take from every direction has to fit together somehow, even though it never will.
Well, it's why Bone can be in Scholastic for a bunch of different generations.
Yeah.
I think the biggest difference between manga and at least American comics is just the simple fact that manga doesn't have like they haven't put all their cards in one genre
Yes.
like American comics have. And yeah, there's other like slice of life comics out there and stuff like what was that one that ended up becoming a movie? There was Ghost World and what was it, American Dream or American Splendor? That's it.
Splendor, yeah.
Like those do exist, but they are just diamonds in the rough,
I mean, part of that is the industry's fault, and part of that's just the difference in our culture from different countries where, like in
I wouldn't
France,
even say
comics.
it's a cultural thing because like
In the
kids have
50s.
always liked a variety of different things. Like, we still, even though we only have like the Cape comics, we still have kids who flock to fantasy stuff like Lord of the Rings, or they flock to the super hard sci-fi stuff with like Warhammer 40K and
Look
all
back
kinds of other stuff.
Look back in the day at the Golden Key comics, like they would do like TV shows, like they had Star Trek, or they do the Phantom. Archie comics. Archie was just random slice of life, fun stuff for kids and teenagers.
The thing to think about, oh, sorry, Doug,
No, go ahead.
is what Skinny just described there are not comics. Warhammer, fantasy books, those sell. There's still a market out for them. Comic books in America as Americans know them, as they were until manga went to Barnes and Noble. Until manga was in Barnes and Noble, that version of comic books does not sell. It's not an industry that anyone should hope to want to be in if they want to actually sell books. Now, if you're trying to have fun and you're trying to make content that you want people to read, fantastic. Like,
well, no, I just bring up the Warhammer as like a different genre. Like people like superheroes, they like fantasy stuff,
Exactly.
they like space stuff.
But
you
what
know?
but what
We-
is comic books to the majority
Yeah.
of Americans?
Whether it's the
zero.
the
It's not those
industry,
things you're
Well,
talking
that's what I'm saying. Is that
Yeah.
was the problem because it wasn't always that way. Because we used to have like these little anthology horror books and mystery books and even love stories and
Yeah.
stuff like that for the ladies. And then one day, just suddenly, no, we're just going to do cape stuff now. Except like there was the Archie stuff like Doug's talking about, but
yeah, which has been a better seller than most comics for longer because
Archie's the only one that's still in the grocery
Yeah.
stores. I just want to point that
because
out.
it still appeals. They still want to be an impulse buy. It's something
What's-
that you pick up and read, and not have to go to a store and the comic shop and pay $1 billion to.
The
Get
bad
into
thing
it,
about
really.
that is that they're $10 now, so they price
Really?
it out. Yeah, I saw it the other day. I picked it up and I looked through it. And what's funny is it's all reprints from classic
Yeah.
Archies. It's none of the new stuff because they know people don't want that crap. And it's $10. It prices a kid out. Like when I went to the store, I could save up a couple of bucks and pick up an Archie double digest or something and have a big comic book to read.
Yeah,
And
I never.
I felt like I was worth my money. I kept those things for a long time.
You also have to think about inflation at the times right now too, with that
Yeah.
$10 that book's costing, because a lot of things are going up, like milk and eggs and stuff like that. So
And so,
Like-
but sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the price is a big thing because I know a lot of people go like, "Oh, the Marvel and DC, they just need to start doing what Shonen Jump is doing and just charge $2-3 a month for
Too
the
late.
subscription." It's like, well, it doesn't quite work the same way because all the manga has already made its money in being produced in Japan.
Exactly.
For manga, maybe not so much for anime anymore, but for manga, they don't need us to be profitable. All the companies here are doing are paying a licensing fee to reprint it, and then paying.
Or in
You
the
know,
case of
had it
Kodansha,
translated.
Well, you know what I think would sell comics like crazy? You know how DC has those, well, they're not good anymore, they've got really bad, but they used to do those animated movies. They had all the Batman ones that were fairly decent until they started getting the new stories. Take all those classic Batman stories, all the graphic novels and collections, and animate those. Make a short movie or something. Get those out and just reprint those stories, and not even comic books, graphic novels.
Yeah.
Flood Walmart with $10 graphic novels, the big thick books with collections of Batman, and where they can go home on Netflix and watch this, the Batman, the adaptation of it, and that would, I almost think that would double your sales. But they don't want to do that.
No, they don't, because in my opinion, it is a dead industry, and the way that the comic book DC and Marvel as an entity within these larger groups are irrelevant, right? They're there to generate IP, and that's about it. And
They're doing a pretty
so
poor
their
job of that,
relationships
too.
are with the comic book shops. They don't want to try anything new. They're making enough money right now that they seemingly do not want to try anything new. And so they're not going to do those things. And Hiroshi's right when he says they can't do that model from the manga because it's too late. It's too
Yeah.
late. Nobody cares.
Well, they can't produce a book. They can't produce one book that they can sell for $2 or $3, let alone an anthology of, a dozen titles.
Nobody wants to buy it.
Yeah, no, in Japan they have 1,000 times as big an audience as the American comic industry.
A couple
And
years
so
oh,
they
sorry.
could afford to produce that and sell it cheap, and then when we're just licensing it and able to put it out for a couple dollars a month, because Shonen Jump is half owned by one of the Japanese publishers anyway. So it's like, this is just icing on the cake for them, and
It's
we can
bonus
sell it
money.
cheaper. But no way DC and Marvel can produce a book hiring artists, writers, yada yada yada, and be able to sell it at the same price as the Shonen Jump.
Yeah, but see, that's the
subscription.
thing, though. They don't have to produce anything. They could go
Yeah,
back. They have decades and decades of classic stories that nobody, people my age, you can't even read it all. Young people can't read it all. My nephew, he got into Batman. He went back and started getting those collections that collected Batman from the very first appearance. He's reading stories that like are older than my parents. Why can't they reprint do a manga sized book? You can even do it black and white. Sell them for $5. They don't have to pay nobody anything. All they're doing is printing the books. They could make it work.
I wonder how much. I mean, certainly something they should look into, but I wonder how much of that would actually appeal to. I mean, if they're trying to get new readers in now, how many new readers are going to be into art from the 50s? And I mean, some of the
That's
stories, sure, but there's a lot of stories that are not going to appeal to kids who are like, hey, this manga is cool because of XYZ reason. And so if we put out, classic stories from the 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever, is it really going to translate the same way
I don't
in
know,
terms of
man.
excitement?
I mean, you never know. You really don't like.
I mean, I'm sure there will be some people who are like, that's really cool, but I know that even as much as I love manga and anime, a lot of manga and anime fans are really trendy about like, oh, if it hadn't come out in the past 2 years, if it's like something from 10 years ago that I was really into, like, oh, that's old, so out of fashion.
Yeah, but I'm not trying to appeal to manga people. I'm just trying to just jumpstart comics in general. Because I know if I went,
But I mean, like, who are you trying to jumpstart it to?
not the manga kids,
Yeah,
just
but I
people in
mean,
general. If I
but
went,
people in general are pretty trendy and all about it has
yeah,
to
but
look
they
new.
I think
most normies don't know anything about manga. They're not going to pick. If you go, if a normie walked through Walmart and they had them, I just tell you this. I remember seeing a Shonen Jump magazine at the grocery store when I was a kid, and I picked it up to look at it, and my mom goes, "What is this weird book? You're not looking at this," and she put it away.
but times have changed, man.
That's
I mean,
true.
go
I
I
am
think
old.
that they
all
would
the
do that
Targets and
about a lot of
Walmarts around here.
superhero stuff now.
I go to the Targets and the Walmarts around here, and there are manga in every single one. And the only other comic books in there are comics for kids, things, the Scholastic type stuff. Other than that, there are no comic books in those shops. Oh, there's one Marvel comic. It's a Deadpool manga that has been licensed and brought back over. That's the only one, and I see it all the time. Why? Because Deadpool's a hot character, and guess what? It's manga style, so kids might actually pick it up. But they're selling and they're different. So I work at a university, and I see these cars at the university, and these are 20-year-old kids, and there's no Star Wars stickers on there. There's no Marvel stickers on their cars. It's anime and manga characters. They go on Crunchyroll, they watch an anime. They're in Target and they say, "Hey, that's the anime I like. I'm buying. I'm picking it up. It's $10." They pick it up. That drives them back to the anime, which drives them back to the manga. Then they're like, "Okay, I've heard of." My friend said there's this thing called Berserk, and I hear it's like crazy drawing, and it just looks amazing. And they go and they pick up the first volume of Berserk or JoJo or something. They go to the store and there it is. There's the first volume. Or it's not in stock, and they walk up to the Barnes & Noble cash and say, "Hey, do you got this?" They say, "Oh, no, we can order it for you." "Okay, I'll be here next week." "Oh, in the meantime, let me get this other book." That's what happens. It is, there's this generation that's going to come up is going to be they're going to be so different. They're going to be nostalgia for anime and manga and not for Superman and Batman,
Yeah.
not for Spider-Man.
So something I
gonna
just thought of as you were saying that is like, someone new gets into a new manga series or whatever, and they say, "Oh, what's this about?" You could tell them, "Oh, well, it's about X, Y, and Z." But if you try to get somebody into like a new Batman or Superman, it's like, "Oh, what's this about?" Well, Batman is this, but this story isn't really about that. It's this is a really dark and bleak Batman, or this is there's no consistency to what Batman or Superman is anymore because there's a million different takes, and all the ones now
Yeah.
suck.
Agreed.
I mean, you have like preschool Batman, and then you have R-rated Batman.
Yeah, Bat Dong.
which I don't like. But
Now, I'm gonna reiterate. We got some more people in the chat. If you go and you back Lone Wolf 2, any physical, you're gonna get Vestry 1, the Matt Weldon one. You're gonna get the Brad Ashworth Psychotron. It's all shiny. You're gonna get Napalm Brothers. You're gonna get this Napalm Brothers Ash Can. You're gonna get a Psychotron CD, and I will ship those out to you within the next few days. You don't have to wait till the end of the campaign. Also, something that we've been talking about: if we hit $2,000, Eric Kent has a collection of digital works that we will make available to all backers. So, jump on that. It's digital. It's like reading a comic book on a robot.
Everybody earlier was talking about how I don't like reading comics digitally. I think I'm at the point where I prefer reading them on my tablet than print, but I like having print because unless you're getting the actual files, you're not really owning a digital comic.
Yeah,
and I don't really trust it. And with the problem with a lot of the indie guys doing the PDFs digitally, is there's something about it when I read a PDF of a comic from an indie guy, every page takes forever to clear up and load as I'm reading it. But
because you've
once I
got
bought
super high quality.
I don't know, because it'll be like low res low res PDFs.
That's
but
weird.
if I read a PDF I bought off sometimes Humble Bundle will sell a bunch of manga in DRM free format, and they always work easy. So I don't know what the deal is, but that's kind of off on a tangent.
I try to send out a lower quality one and link for the bigger one usually.
Yeah.
Because I know I've been on my phone and try to open my own PDF and it like take a year to load.
I'm like, I'd be okay if it was like you did that once when you first opened it, but it's like every time you do a page turn, it's blurry, and then you have to wait a second for it to clear up. It's very distracting.
Well, like we was talking about, I like to read digital if it's stuff like I pay the $3 a month for Shonen Jump.
Yeah.
I love getting on that and reading random stuff.
I like it because I can take my tablet if I go eat lunch and I can set it on the table and read it easier, but I can't do that. There's a lot of places where having my tablet is a lot more convenient than dealing with the printed book. And I've had a lot of issues the past year where I bought manga where there was a printing error or the ink smeared or 40 pages of it were duplicated. And it's like, that's either don't have some of those problems with digital, or it's easy to fix digital.
Yeah. Well, see, like, I like being able to take my phone or my tablet to work.
Yeah.
Because that way my clients don't get boogers and stuff on my book, or, go grab a piece of bologna and then rub it all over my book that I'm trying to read.
I think that the thing that, like, I've only ever read digital comics and really actually read them in two formats: Webtoons and then the Shonen Jump app. Those are the only things that have kept my attention. And I've tried to read Western comics, and they just do not work for me in digital.
Well, like I said, I'm mostly reading manga digital, and maybe it's something, the fact that art already works better. I mean, it works fine at a smaller size. I mean, it's originally printed bigger than American comic, but when they do it in a collection, it's smaller, and the art still works because it's not as dense with.
Well, see, I was using Marvel Unlimited, and it's kind of like I can't remember that other one. Amazon owns it now.
Comixology.
Yeah, Comixology. If you use the app, you can go panel by panel, and I enjoy that because it'd go, each panel. But if I get on something and I can't do that, Shonen Jump works fine for me. I can, I read it. Yeah. It's fun. If I get on something else and try to read American comics, like I used to have another app, it kills me. It's I don't know. It has to do the panel by panel thing for me to be able to enjoy it.
Well, like when manga first got popular in like 2000, 2001, 2003, all of the comic companies were like, "Oh, wow, that's what makes it popular is the size. We'll trick them into thinking it's manga because the size is the most important element of it being manga." So they'd reprint their comics in that size and they'd shrink them down. But since even then, so many American comics were like, let's just dump tons of words on a page and everything. When you shrink that down to a manga size, it's not a fun reading experience. So I imagine some of that's the issue a lot of people have with reading digital comics. Is
The
that
serial the I think that the serialization method that manga has done is far more enjoyable to read than just reading through the same amount of pages
yeah,
of an American style comic book. Like, think about Bakuman. I mean, that story is really compelling, and it's serialized. You want to find out what happens to the characters. You're really enjoying them, but there's not that level of characterization in Spider-Man, and you shouldn't expect it in it. However, the you have action comics that are that are manga, something like My Hero Academia or Yu Yu Hakusho or something, and they're more compelling to read because of the way that they were written, the way they were produced. They just seem to work better nowadays. And I don't blame American comics for that, because how could they possibly know what the future holds? They couldn't. But when those things started to change, they could have changed. They still can. They still can start right now start making a Batman story that's compelling, or just forget about Batman and move on. Start making other comics, but they're not comic book companies anymore. That's the thing. They're
no,
not.
they're brand, character brand companies.
So
It's
when
not
people,
about making a comic. It's about let's make a product. Let's make a merchandise based on this character.
Mhm.
And at best, the comic is a merchandise, throwaway merchandise for the character.
and
It's like
so
the values in the brand, the character brand, and not in the actual comic, and the storytelling and the art and everything.
so when people say things like, "Oh, we got to save the industry. We're gonna make comics for kids," and it's like, well, kids don't want to read the comics, the style that you're producing. Why? Well, because they are reading they're reading all the manga they want on one manga, or they're paying for Shonen Jump, or they are watching the anime on Crunchyroll. And they want to read that, man. They don't care about the American comics, and I don't blame them. But that's where I think people have to tailor their comics to a specific audience. So
Well, if that's what they're going for.
right. So like, for
But
example, Shadiversity. That guy, he wrote a fantasy book, and his channel attracts fantasy book fans. Well, now he's adapted it into a comic book with Mike Miller, and he's selling it to his fantasy book fans. They want Shadiversity's book. They want Shad's book. They don't care about Jimmy Reyes's fantasy book, because they don't know Jimmy Reyes. They don't care. They're not going to buy it. Like, oh, that looks like a comic book. But what they want is Shad's book. He's selling it to an audience. Now, what some people say is, well, I do not want to have to produce a bunch of content just to sell my comic book. Totally get it. It's a lot of work. It's tough work.
Well, yeah.
But then
Like, are you talking about
not you
like
guys, but some
content
people
marketing?
about it.
Are you talking about like content marketing where you have to?
I'm not talking about content marketing
Okay.
in the same sense that what's his face talks about it. Tyler, or whatever his name is. That guy is talking about marketing. What I'm talking about is building an audience with a good product. That is your product.
Okay.
And then you then sell it to those people. It's like both of the things are your product, and you're selling both of them to one another.
Well, one thing that gets me gets me frustrated a lot, is when people say the only reason that comics aren't successful anymore is that they're not in grocery stores, gas stations, or Walmart. It's like, that is certainly an issue. Place where they're being sold, the placement of them, that hurts. But it's not the only issue. That's why all that Red Rooster crap didn't do any good at Walmart, because in marketing, we studied a real basic principle is that there's 5 P's as part of marketing. There's price, placement, product, promotion, and people. If you're only addressing the place, it's in Walmart, and you're ignoring the other things, it's still going to be a $5 comic that's too expensive for any kid to want to read. You're not promoting it worth the crap. You're not really thinking about what anybody who's going to shop at Walmart wants. If you're putting the same crap that doesn't sell in a comic shop into Walmart, it's not going to sell there either.
Yep.
And
Well, that's what I say. Like, you have to tailor to your
yeah,
audience.
if the product is you have those, what the hell is the company's name, Allegiance or whatever.
Yeah.
I saw those displays in Walmart.
I never
on
saw a
cap-
single one.
No, I
right
didn't
next. I saw one that was like hidden way back in the back of the electronics section. I saw one that was in the book section that was all beat to hell. But you look at those and you say, "Oh, this is going to get kids into it." It's like you look at those next to the manga stuff. All of those. I'm not saying the art's bad, but it's all the same dreary colors that are every American comic now that aren't exciting to.
Yeah, I hate modern comic colors.
Comic coloring is garbage, and the art is not exciting a lot of times. And you have that next to colorful manga colors with really exciting covers and everything. You're not going to attract any new kids with that stuff because they didn't pay attention to what all they worried about was, we got to get it in Walmart. We got to worry about where it is. We're not going to worry about what it is. And
Well, if you're going to sell a comic book, who thought Chicken Man would be good?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. And then you even on the little cardboard display that they were on, it would say like, I don't remember. I remember one of the words were like, "Oh, it's collectible." It's like, that's not. That's
It's the
only
same stuff
important
that failed.
to.
It's the same stuff
Yeah.
that has failed and why those people don't have a job there anymore. It's
Mhm.
not they got canceled, whatever. The reason they don't have a job there is because there's not enough work. I guarantee you, if they were clamoring for artists over there at those places, those people would be in work and they'd be making money. It's the same garbage that failed. It boggled my mind when people were like, "This is such a good thing. Oh, comics back in Walmart." I'm like, there's already comics in Walmart.
Yeah. If you're not making comics that anybody wants to buy, wherever you put them is not going to matter. If you can't make them at a price that's appealing, you can't make a product that's appealing, you can't communicate why people should buy it beyond saying, "Oh, they're collectible." As somebody who wants to read comics, them being collectible is not a good thing. That means it's going to be frustrating to get a hold of it. I want comics that are like, here's a cool story, easy to follow, easy to get.
Collectible.
Well, another thing too about that book. Okay, what kid is excited about like a super artistic style that's
Yeah.
trying to look like a 40s painting or something?
Exactly. I mean,
Like grandma might like the look of it, but she's not going to read a comic book.
Yeah, it looks fantastic, but you're right. The kids are trained now for a different artistic style. They're trained for a different style, and that comic book, as well drawn as it might be, it's not going to sell to those kids because they're not trained to do that. I saw a comic today from a new follower on Twitter I got from all of this stuff I talked about today, and honestly, I thought that would sell better than a lot of the stuff that these guys that have left Marvel and DC are making. And it was just an amateur guy doing a real amateur style. Why? Because it has a sort of a anime manga look, but it doesn't look like one of those anime manga ripoffs. It looks still like an American drawing.
don't get me started on that.
Yeah, I don't want to.
I love stuff that's manga and anime inspired art. I hate when they say this is manga. It's like,
I do too. No American is making manga. Sorry.
yeah, okay. So when I got into manga in like 1999, no manga fan wanted, nobody bought the in.
Your colors in the chat, Ithacus. Your colors are good. How do you pronounce it? How do you pronounce that word? I don't know.
It's
Ichthus. There you go. Ichthus. Your colors are actually good. I like your colors.
Weren't you doing like a list of people who you liked?
I was. Those are.
And you did Brian. You did Brian Shear. I'm like, I love Brian's coloring because
See,
it's
you put
it's
Eric
not-
on there
he,
too.
He has he mixes bright colors or like
He
purples into the shadows and stuff, so it
It's a
looks
beard.
appealing. Whereas everything in a comic now is so dreary. Everything's brown and gray.
Because
Every-
Brian paints them. Brian is painting it. He's not just coloring it like a comic, like a DC comic book. He's painting it, and
Yeah, like the colors in that Psychotron. Okay, I mean it's a little bit of a darker tone because the story's got like a darker theme, but it's not
They're
muddy, it's
saturated.
not dreary.
It
It
still looks
has
good, yeah.
appeal. It's bright. I mean, it's bright even though it's not.
Well, I'll tell you
not bright.
somebody. This even though this guy don't like me, um, this guy right here that did
Yeah.
Napalm Brothers,
I like those colors. when
his
I bought
colors
that book.
are insane. Like just
When that comic, when he sent that to the cartoonist kayfabe guys, when they got a hold of it and they showed it on the show back when they used to open all their mail on the show, they actually commented on the colors. I believe.
the
So I
colors in
remember
that book are amazing. And see those styles like Eric, I love Eric's colors. I don't like. I don't know how to explain it.
I
like-
included Eric's colors on my list as
Yeah.
people as colors that I liked when I
seen
did my
that.
list.
I don't know.
And I don't just say that because I like him, and we sort of, both work on Gravestone Press books. So we're closely associated, collaborators. I say that because it's true. There's plenty of people that I collaborate with that I don't say, oh yeah, the colors are great.
Yeah.
Going back to the Mitch Breitweiser comics, I think you're absolutely right. I think that style was never going to sell there, and it's a dead model. The periodical
Yeah,
floppy comic is dead.
like
Now,
I said, everything that they
it's fine, but
yeah, because a lot like we were talking about earlier, a lot of what they think comics is stuff that's like, oh, it has to be this floppy format, it has to be yada yada yada. It's like, to me, the most important part of a comic is the comic, the art and the story, the meat and potatoes of what's inside the comic, not what format, not what size, not if it's print or digital or whatever. And it seems like a lot of people, it's all the superficial stuff that's what makes it a comic, and I don't think that's helpful.
I just got to mention what Dave said right here, real quick. Walmart shoppers would read a Duck Dynasty comic or The Adventures of Bigfoot, either the creature or the monster truck.
true. But they're not making those. And make it with attractive comic book art, like you would see.
How do you make Duck Dynasty guys out of attractive art? What would a Duck Dynasty comic?
I would like a Bigfoot monster truck comic though.
Yeah.
But if it was cheap enough,
Yeah.
they would take a shot on it.
Or
Eric
not
Hawkins is wrong.
necessarily-
His colors don't suck. He's actually one of the few people whose colors I actually do
I
like.
think I have one of his books right here.
And it's not even necessarily it has to be cheap. It has to be a good value. So if you give like
Zombie
Yes.
Adventures.
a manga is $10,
Right.
you're getting a huge chunk of content.
Like that Adventures of Dai Dragon Quest manga. I like to say manga. That I had there it cost me $20, or it cost $20. I bought it on Amazon, so it was a little cheaper. But it hypothetically would cost retail $20, but it feels worth it because you're getting like 300 pages of comic book.
Like I hate floppies because it's like, oh, here's nothing. And if I was paying like $1 for it, that's okay.
So
But if I'm paying $5, and I'm saying like crap off the newsstand, but if it's crowdfunding and
Well, you don't know how much that like we brainstorm behind the scenes about doing something. Like we're really trying to think of a place to go because I'm not a big fan of this model, and the only reason I do 20 something page stories is because we all have real lives and real jobs.
yeah, like I bitch about this stuff, but I've been thinking about, oh, I want to make a comic kind of seriously for the past year. I'm like, yeah, I think I would just kind of want to start with smaller stories and print little pamphlets. Even though I bitch about floppies, I'm like, it's kind of what I want to do because that's a manageable thing to do.
Maybe
print and
I've even thought about going to Staples and like making like
just doing like mini comic zines.
yeah, and just selling those for like $1.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants the fancy book, here we'll sell you this one, but here's this one for $1.
That's kind of what I want to do is just like some super homebrew, print it off my printer and do a construction paper cover and staple it together. But
You know what's funny is I limit myself to just using the colors off of the old DC Comics style guide colors, and my colors, people think, oh, that looks fun, or like, well, those look good, and it's like they're terrible. I'm a terrible colorist. I just do it flat, and then I start tweaking it to make it look sort of retro, and that's all I do, right?
Yeah.
Because
That's what I like.
it looks good.
I like this. There's
It looks good.
there's a couple artists I follow, not at all involved in any kind of comic scene, and they do like the retro style colors where it's just they'll add a little bit of distressing effect to it and kind of fade out the colors. It looks so good. That is totally the style I like. Is where it looks like an illustration print, advertising illustration printed in the 50s or something.
Yeah.
Where it's like bright colors, flat colors with a little bit of texture to them.
Like the
this
Fly
mud-
Fox Pro cover for Psychotron. I don't think I have it right here. Maybe I do. I've got a stack of books right here.
You want to talk about collectability? Not as many of those were printed, so those are the most collectible Psychotron.
I've actually got a stack of them I'm going to send to you, and then you can sign them and be like, hey, these are signed. And I got a stack of books to send to Eric, too.
One of the things I think about is people that are like, well, you know, I got to price my comics high so I can sell them and make money back on it. And it's like, well, you could go out and sell them to people, like go to cons, and like there are people that still do that. They still make some
A
money.
lot of the people who used, like, even the webcomics guys who used to go to like a million cons a year and sell their books, nobody wants to do that anymore because they can make more money just doing a Patreon and making, you know, more stuff than going to a con where nobody wants to buy their stuff anymore. Because nobody's going to cons to buy books anymore.
They're going to the cons to see the half-naked cosplay girls.
Yeah, like when when I first got into stuff, like all the anime cons, they would bring over like the big name bands who were doing the theme songs for the shows. They'd bring in the creators as guests, and now all the big name guests are like, oh, here's a famous cosplayer. Here's the English voice actor. Here's some YouTube guy who bitches about video games.
There's a
like Rick Piper, his soul sells comics when he goes to cons. I talked to him about it recently, where he goes and he sells his comics at cons, and they're not the world's most like beautiful looking comics, but he still sells them because he works hard, he hustles, he's out there cranking
That's
it
another
out.
thing is a lot of people go there and just sit like a dead duck at a table and not do anything to actually try to sell their books at a con.
See, I'm kind of intimidating in real life, and
Use that to your advantage. Don't threaten them. You better buy this book, boy.
I did. I had a little. There's a little con I went to. It wasn't really a con. It was a celebration of comics and comic artists. They did at the Putnam County Library over in Cookville, and the whole bottom floor of the library is just comic book artists and guys selling their books.
Yeah.
And you know, it was a lot of fun, and I actually sold quite a few copies of Lone Wolf there, even though I'm scary and intimidating. Because if you've got a cool looking book or something interesting, and people will come and ask you about it. It was crazy how many people come up and they saw my book and they were like, "Is this a Native American character?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I start giving them the background, and then they were like, "Okay, I'm buying this book." That's, I mean, you don't really you have to sell yourself in a way.
That's
But-
another thing, like you're talking
being a
about, how
salesman.
everybody's just copying all the image stuff from 30 years ago, doing the same thing, ripping off the same things. But they come to your table, oh, is this a book about a Native American hero? It's like, well, that's kind of something that's different to them, clearly, if that's what drew their attention to it. Not
Is this John Redcorn?
Did he cheat on Dale? Did he cheat with Dale Ribble's wife?
Is this Apache Chief? Chuck. That's me growing taller, just swelling up like that. Apache Chief was from Super Friends.
Super Friends.
Yeah.
So,
Well, see, Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna go off on a tangent. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that was the whole thing. Like with Lone Wolf, I wanted something different. I don't want to copy stuff. I don't want to do superhero comics either.
Yeah.
Cyclotron's not a superhero comic. Some people might think it's not. It's going to get really anti. Well, I hate to say political, but it's going to get kind of It's going to hit along had some political stuff here before long. But my favorite comic books were like Swamp Thing and Ghost Rider, and I always hated those comics when they crossed over with other superhero books.
Yeah.
Swamp Thing belongs in his own world. There's one where he crosses over with the Justice League, and I'm like, I don't want Superman in Swamp Thing's world.
There's an episode. There's an issue written by Alan Moore that has Superman in it, and it's actually good.
That's in one of the collections I've got. It is good, but I still don't want Superman in that world.
Do you like crossovers in general? I'm getting to the point where I don't really like crossovers. Because, like, if I'm into a series, it's like, oh, I really like this, and it crosses over with something that I really don't like, it kind of taints it for me. And I know that at the same time, they're saying, like, oh, we can attract people who like the other things. So it's like,
It just smacks of in comic books. It just smacks of the cash grab we know it is.
yeah. And now it's like everything's just a scheme to get you to read stuff you don't like.
Yeah.
Because everything's crossing over all the time.
Well, see,
And you have to follow everything if you want to follow anything. And I'm like, that makes it harder for
me
me
and
to get
Skinny's
into.
talked about crossing over Lone Wolf and Otis Stein.
Yeah.
But that's just because we've talked about that from day one. Because both characters have supernatural origins. And it could be a one-off story that doesn't
Yeah,
have
that's
to
the
be
thing. If it's a
canon.
one-off, that's different from like, well, we're going to cross over everything. So now, if you want to watch one MCU movie, if you didn't watch these other three that you didn't like, you're not going to understand what's going on.
That's the Dwayne McDuffie, the creator of Static Shock. He's dead now, but he wrote this. He wrote a famous article on the internet about the theory that basically every TV show that ever existed is in the figment of a one child's imagination in St. Elsewhere. So St. Elsewhere was a soap set in a hospital, and at the end of it, basically, it suggests that there is a kid that has imagined this whole scenario, and none of it has ever happened. It's just this autistic kid's imagination, and that is how that ends. Well, the problem is that show crossed over with a show and with multiple shows, which crossed over with other shows, and basically it wipes out everything from the X-Files to Scooby-Doo. It crossed over with, and this all happened in this kid's head. If you care about continuity in that sense of like, well, then it definitely crossed over. This one character was in all these shows, and he crossed over with Harlem Globetrotters, and so, well, you know, there goes everything. You know, there goes Gilligan's Island, and or you can just not worry about it. And that was the argument he made: is stop worrying about this continuity and trying to make everything matter and tie in together and appealing to these old comic book fans, because those people they've diminished to the point now where it's such a small group that they don't even want to read the books anymore.
Like, I like continuity because I remember growing up as a kid, and every cartoon they'd be like, oh, here's one episode where something happens or some one-off character is introduced, and then the next episode it's like completely unrelated. So I liked it when I started getting into a series where, oh, here's some continuity, something that happened last season they actually, reference again. But then it's like, with all this comic continuity, it's so dense and everything has to be, oh, we have to, some goofy Three Stooges joke from the 40s has to be in continuity now.
Right.
And it's all, if you're not aware of that stupid joke, from 80 years ago, you're not going to get this. It's just so impenetrable, and everything is crossed over, and
see, I like
you have to be aware of everything. I like continuity to an extent,
like loose continuity. That's what.
But if it's there's a million things that you in a million different things series that you have to follow it, or you're not going to understand. That's not for me as a nerd, if I can't get into that, it's no way that's going to work for getting new readers.
See, like to me, as far as continuity goes, what I like is, say like you had an episode of a TV show, and somebody farted, and the whole thing was about like somebody farting, and then like 100 episodes down the road they reference the fart just for a second, and you laugh, go, yeah, that happened in this episode. That's all the continuity I want. Was it? Oh yeah, they acknowledged that it happened, but it has no bearing on anything past or present other than it happened one time. And that's the way I think these comic stories should work. You have a story, if you want to reference another story, that's fine, but you don't have to. It doesn't need to define where anything is chronologically. I think American comics have all this problem with chronological stuff, like DC relaunched their universe several times, and Marvel ruined Spider-Man several times. It's just stupid stuff. Dave says Punisher stories were best when the rest of the Marvel universe was ignored. I agree. I was reading the Mike Baron Marvel stuff a while back, and it stands on its own, and it's so good. I didn't know this because it was before my time, but did you know that Marvel made a bunch of random standalone graphic novels of the Punisher? Like, I like that. I like that painting. That's Steven Starlight.
He's a little too bulky. That's not how the canon character.
Well, this is like he's powered up there.
He's swole, yeah.
Now you have to make it continuity that he's swole.
Yep. That was back in his powerlifting days.
See, like in Lone Wolf, the character already has 3 or 4 different looks, and those looks don't define continuity other than that's kind of like the time period for the character. If you see the character and he's dressed like John Redcorn, that's like pre-2000s Lone Wolf. Modern Lone Wolf looks like,
Right. That's the... Sorry, what?
Whatever. And then you've got Civil War Lone Wolf and etc. That's the only, thing.
I think that's the beauty of the kind of story you're telling there, is that it doesn't have to be. Like, I looked at these other versions, and I started to draw my own, and I looked at these and I like that, or I'm going to use that. And you can, because he's lived so long that it could be set anytime. Like, as long as the items are in the, you can sort of, if there's a car or something like that, but you can tell stories, and it doesn't have to have the same coat. It's like, well, that's not the coat he had. Well, maybe that coat was at the shop, or maybe it got ripped, and he just tried a different coat out, or it doesn't matter.
Eventually, a coat's going to wear out, so it's like you watch a character, they can't wear the same underwear all the time. I mean,
is that a challenge?
I have sir, I've been wearing this underwear for 25 years.
I don't think I could a pair of underwear can last that long unless it's
not physically impossible. I mean, physically possible.
I was putting on this T-shirt this morning, and I put my arm through the hole. I'm like, that hole doesn't feel big enough. It's like, oh, it's because there's a big hole in the armpit that I went through.
I have one like that. I did the same thing one day. I was like, oh, I made the hole bigger. And I was like, no.
There's so many... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
There's so many garbage superhero comics out there in the history of these comics that they can't just start at, well, we're going to start at the Man of Steel, and we're going to put those out. And, when they did the Crisis on Infinite Earths, that's when we're going to say that we're going to put these out and we're going to put them in a manga size, right? And they reprint them. The problem is, at some point, you run into garbage comics that nobody wants to read, or they don't hold up. Like, a lot of them just do not hold up. And I want them to, because I wanted to read those when I was a kid, and I didn't get the opportunity. And then I became an adult, and I'm like, oh. But the way that a lot of manga, not all of it, but a lot of it has been written, it's compelling, it's kinetic, it moves from one panel to the next. And you're reading.
That's the big thing, is the art. Like, there's this one crowdfunded book that I got recently, and the art was so good in terms of how as you were reading it, it felt like things were moving from panel to panel. The flow of the storytelling was really good. The story was probably not as good as the storytelling visually. And then so many times when I look at a mainstream superhero book compared to even like an ugly manga,
So static.
yeah, it's like even when it's like a good artist and it's an action scene, or the expressions feel like somebody making a face into a mirror. It doesn't feel like somebody actually emoting. An
Well,
action will feel like them striking, striking a pose, but
I
it
hate
never
it.
really feels like they're in motion.
I hate it when you get a book and it's like the artist just draws a different pinup for every panel.
Yeah,
There's, like you're saying, there's no motion. It's like, wow, this could be a cover. This could be a cover.
but
You
even
know?
if it's like they're doing a sequential, just like how everyone's posed, it doesn't feel like they're in motion. They don't feel animated. They just feel, oh, here's everybody get around and strike the pose, and that's going to be this panel. It's not something moving. It's something static, like Fly Fox said. And then another thing, uh, it feels like every time you read a mainstream comic, everybody's, no matter what emotion they have, the expression is always, they're grimacing. They look, it's always the same ugly face no matter what throughout the whole book. And it's like, guys, do another expression.
I only have one expression. It's
That
this.
expression is pain. And that still looks more. You look like it's that dummy from that comedian.
Jeff Dunham.
Yeah, you look like the old man
Yeah,
dummy
he's
when you're doing that face.
I'm gonna wear my sunglasses.
Like, if I compare this Astro Boy book to
That's worth some money now, buddy.
like Spy Family or something, this is not as compelling. It's silly. There's some fun to it, but I'm not going to just sit here and read through this whole thing in one sitting. But I will read that Spy Family, right? Because it's modern, it's new, and it has our sensibilities have changed.
Captain America battles Baron Blood. This is my manga.
But then, like, if I want to read, I have this old. This is the first, like, Marvel or DC comic book that was actually a superhero comic. I did have some like Kellogg's comics that were DC branded. That had like Ozzie Smith and Nolan Ryan and stuff in them.
Nolan Ryan.
But like this was the first Marvel thing I ever owned, the first actual comics, and it's got comics by Jack Kirby and John Byrne in it.
Yeah.
And there's only 3 stories. There's this one that has the Red Skull in it, and the Cosmic Cube. And I was like, this is crazy, and that sort of was so wild. It just blew my mind with that Kirby art, like this panel, red and just bright colors, and just iconic images. And then you had, I didn't care for the art as much, the Jack Kirby art in the Avengers story, but I liked seeing Captain America and him joining the Avengers. That was cool. The story's kind of meh. But then you had John Byrne drawing the history of Captain America up until the point when he basically goes in the water, right?
Dude, that's what,
And I love this. I read this thing off. I mean, it's taped multiple times now. I read the cover off of that thing.
Yeah.
what's cool is this is actually John Byrne art too. This
I
tiny
like-
book.
This was $2. Yeah,
That's what this was.
$2 well spent.
$1.75. Of course, it's black and white, but look how thick this is. Well, you can't hardly see it. Look at that.
Yeah, and I think that those are good. I like to collect those when I can find them. Mostly I have the big Essentials volume, but they're all out of print now. They don't want. I just saw a comment on Twitter. Someone's like, well, why would you sell? It's a boutique market. And it's like, well, you're complaining about how you want to change the world,
Yeah.
and you're making a boutique market. That's
You're not
the
going to
problem.
grow a boutique market.
They-
I don't like when it's like when people putting out a new comic are like, we're going to make it so only it's gonna be collectible because we're gonna artificially make it collectible.
But nobody
Like,
cares
well,
about the characters. Nobody wants to
Yeah.
collect it because who are these characters? I've literally
It's like
never.
you're not selling a comic, you're selling a artifact.
So dumb.
Look at this Tarzan book I've got. It was 50 cents back in the day.
That's awesome.
It's got art by Joe.
That's the thing now. It's like
Kubert. I'd love to have that. I've been wanting to. I would want to get my hands on those Joe Kubert.
It's in color too.
See, that's what I want, man.
This is really, really cool.
I want to get my little brother had some Tarzan comics back in the day, and I liked the art in them, but we read them to pieces, and so I don't know who it was, and I want to get my hands on those Kubert books.
Speaking of Archie, 50 cents.
Yeah, I never actually read Archie, but I read Sonic comics. when
Oh,
they
I did
first
too,
came out.
man. I love the
I
Sonic
had like the
comics.
original miniseries. It would be worth a bunch of money now if I took care of my stuff when I was a kid.
Well, I mean,
I would always see the ads for them, and maybe about 10 years ago, they briefly did a Sonic Digest, like those Archie Digests. And I picked some of those up, and it's like you said, they print like an old story from when I was reading it in 1993. They print one from like 2 years prior, and it was like $5 for a bunch of comics that any Sonic kid would have enjoyed reading.
see,
So
when I
these are these Archie collections. And they're about manga size. They're about manga size. They're a little bit slimmer, but they're like $10 or $11, and they're in color, which I think Archie probably should be in color.
Yeah.
But I love these, and I'll actually buy these. I want these because it has the Jughead Time Police. Oh man! And there's the weird Jughead's Diner. I want to get that one because I remember I had that one part of that story in the digest one time, and I wanted to read the rest. And I had no idea until I was an adult that Archie was anything other than the digest. That there was actual comic book floppy issues that people bought at the
Yeah.
comic book store. I had no idea. I just thought they sold it at the grocery store. Yeah, I love
see,
Archie.
I have this.
Oh, dude,
Volume-
The rest of that series you're never gonna get.
Oh,
that's worth some money right
Are
there.
you sure?
The first one is not that hard to get, but like after you get past volume 3 and into the second series, they go for like 200.
Yeah, it's not-
Yeah, I can't find the second, the series after this. But I got both of these books.
One of
Really?
the half price books around here had the whole series, and every one of them except like the first one was a normal price. The second one was maybe like $10 or $20. The rest of them were like $250 and $300 each.
so crazy. So but
That's what
but
frustrates me is all
it's like
the
a licensing problem from what I
well, some of it, it's just like because when I got into anime and manga, there were a dozen different anime licensing companies here that do not exist anymore, and some of their series got picked up by Funimation. Some of them languished for 20 years until someone picked them up, and some of them never got picked up.
Well, that's why I like that Kodansha has Kodansha USA, and it's their company.
Yeah.
And they're doing
That's
their
pretty
own-
recent too.
Yeah,
that they
that's
started doing that.
fantastic because they're able to put out their own stuff. I
But
don't want
even-
the licensing companies. I want those companies to do it themselves.
Even Viz, in like 2002, 2003, they got at least partially bought by the Shueisha or Shogakukan or whatever in Japan. So they automatically have licensing for most of the Shonen Jump stuff, but there are series that were, Shonen Jump series in 2003 that they do not have the license to anymore or they've gone out of print. Like you can't get Ultimate Muscle.
Yeah, well, that's probably never going to come over, right? Because there's all kinds of issues with.
Well, Ultimate Muscle they released in English throughout the early 2000s,
And
and it went out of print, and
interesting.
it's not available on the Shonen Jump
So
app.
that's the
Like,
thing. It's like there's like licensing reasons. There's who owns the
Yeah.
rights, who wants to buy the rights.
Is
Reason
that-
why they don't release them. But the
Shaman
DC
King
and
went-
Marvel, they don't release and have their old content in print because they want to artificially
Yeah.
market there so that they can sell omnibuses.
And then they want to make all their stories so continuity heavy. You need to know what happened in a book from 10 years ago that you can't get anymore, which is dumb.
Is that why I can't read Fist of the North Star on the Shonen app because they don't have the rights to it.
I don't know that was ever a shonen.
It was.
It was.
Yeah,
Like you get
I
on the
think-
Viz website and they have
Because I
it.
know it's being printed now.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
printed
not
it.
everything that
Some of the older
Viz
stuff's
printed
not on
is.
that app.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
not everything that Viz has done has been Shonen Jump either.
See, I can buy it through
Yeah.
them, but I can't read it, and that makes me mad.
Because they have a lot of series that aren't released under their Shonen Jump brand, so they're not available in the Shonen Jump app.
Yeah, like the Ultraman. I was wanting to read
Yeah.
some Ultraman.
Because they do still license some. Like Shaman King was a Shonen Jump book, and then they lost the license to it. Now Kodansha does it.
Yeah, because they didn't want to keep printing. They weren't going to print it anymore, I
Yeah.
guess.
But I mean, they don't print a lot of the stuff that's on the Shonen Jump app. But then there's still stuff that they printed, like Ice Shield 21 and different things that are not available in the app.
So these books, right? These omnibus editions. I only own 3 of them. The other one I'm not going to pick up is Wonder Woman by George Perez. But this Stan Lee one is retailed for $75, and then goes out of print. Can't get it. Then this Batman, this was $125. I bought this when Barnes and Noble was having like a half price. Any hardback was half price.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would never have bought it. But then, in order to get, if you want to just collect all of the Batman comics that would be in that, you're talking about that price or more to get all the trade paperbacks. It's ridiculous. It's so much money.
And it's not like buying any of those out of print comics is doing Marvel and DC any good. I mean,
Yeah. Well,
they're like, oh, we want to make it collectible for the secondary market. Well, that doesn't do you any good. Why don't
but
you
it
make
does
it
the shop
available?
good, and they care about the shops still
Yeah.
existing, because guess what? Most of the comic book shops, if they're only selling comic books, they could go out of business tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Their margins are so slim.
There was
Yeah,
a new shop that just opened here like a year and a half ago. I don't understand why they would do that. Because
There
it
is-
doesn't. They don't sell games and stuff. It's a small shop. It's like, oh, we're all about the comics.
There
It's
is
like,
a
why?
most of the comic book shops in the Phoenix area are in areas of town cheap rent. So people don't want to. They're like it's a destination that you have to go to. But there's one that's in a pretty decent mall, and it's on the strip as you walk down to where the theater is. This is an outdoor mall, and it's in that section, and so people might actually venture in there to look around. And what do they have prominently in there when you enter in there? Well, right to your right as you enter in, they have the children's comics that are new.
Yeah.
Good idea. But then it's pops. As you walk
Oh,
in,
God.
you can see pops. And then whatever, like if they have something they're featuring, there's a feature section and toys. And then you got to walk to the wall, to the far wall and to the back to get to the comics. And they don't sell as much manga in there because there's a Barnes & Noble in that mall.
Yeah. Terror Inc.
Yeah, this is the last comic book I actually bought.
Really?
And like, if I tried to buy this online, it would have been like $15 or $20. I paid like $3 for it.
So yeah, I bought the first couple issues of Slash Maraud in the 25-cent bin at the half price books that now doesn't exist. And it's sad.
But see,
But-
I
like,
mean, we have like 20 different locations where I'm at Half Price Books.
We
we have the headquarters down
This
here.
one closed. This one had
The headquarters is like 3 times as big as a normal store. The first time I went was like right before COVID. They had just tons of stuff, tons of manga, and then after they opened back up after COVID, it's not been the same. But
I don't say all these things just to be complainy. I just say that, like, to point out to people, look how messed up my hair is today, that the so-called American comic book industry, the quote-unquote big two, they're not comic book companies. They don't care. They're not going to change. There's no saving it. And then you have the people that they fall for this thing of like, we're going to save the industry by making boutique books that have no relevance. It's like,
once
well,
books that are garbage stories because they don't go anywhere. Nothing happens in them. Like there was
Or
one
they don't
one
put
book
out-
one book I tried because I'm like, oh, this artist looks like he does some good stuff, and I heard about a couple of live streams. So I'm like, I'll give it a try. and I read it because I'm slow to read stuff. I read it like when his second volume campaign came out, and I'm like, I'm not gonna back the second one because nothing happened to this first one. It's like 50 pages of a cold open of a TV show, and it's like, when is the story gonna start? It never started, and the end comes. You're like, oh well, nothing happened. I'm not gonna buy the second one.
And they're competing. They think they're competing with, like, I don't know who they think they're competing with, because in reality they're competing. If you're just talking about actual comics, like what literally we would consider comics, like including manga, you're competing with a comic that has an adaptation that a kid can watch on either a streaming service they already have, like Demon Slayer, or they can watch on Crunchyroll, which I think the commercial, watch the commercial version is still free, and they can just go and watch it right now. They can just go watch a cartoon version of it. That's what you're competing with. And it's like they have the margins now where they can sell it for a big price and they can get that money back, but it's not going to last forever.
What you got there,
And they're
Doug?
not building anything. They're not developing an audience that they're selling to that
Yeah.
exists outside of that boutique audience. No new people coming in.
This is the Lone Wolf promo that I did back when I first did the first Lone Wolf. It's the first 8 pages, I think, in black and white. And it's like really cool. It looks really neat.
Yeah.
I love his art in black and white. The color, I have a color version of it, which I think I stuck it in the rest of the comics, but the colors on that first version look really good too. But his black and white, his art works so well in black and white.
See, it was originally supposed to be black and white, so he put a lot of detail into it. But I was a dummy and made a stretch goal. We never should have went. Those colors are awesome. That guy did a good job, but we never should have went colors. We should have just stuck to black and white.
Yeah. There's
See,
like a lot of people who are like, oh, you have to have color because color is always going to be more appealing than black and white. I'm like,
It's so fun.
no.
Yeah, it says the best-selling books right now are black and white. They're black and white.
I really would like to do like this. I'll do a little 10-page book. You
Yeah.
do chapters.
That's what I would kind of like to do. And see, going back to all of our goofy business talk again, it's like, it's okay for like you to have a disposable gateway into a series, like a cheap thing like that, and then you collect it into something fancier later. That's kind of what I like.
Like, see, I would print these and take these to cons.
Yeah.
Sell these for $1 a piece. Or I'd see how much it costs to print. Maybe
Yeah.
$2. But
I mean,
try to
you
shoot
could sell them for a
$1.
reasonable amount of money.
$10. I mean, you got 10 pages. It's a little chapter. Hey, maybe you're just thinking, yeah, Lone Wolf looks cool. I'll pick up this one chapter and check it out. But like we've been talking about doing global comics, I could put the chapters up on global comics if you just wanted to pay to read the small chapters on there for $1 or so. And then once we got a 50 to 100 page book, collect that, and that's what we sell on Amazon.
I think that, and then you don't worry about these crowdfunding things throughout the year. You don't even have to worry.
Yeah.
Spend
And then
your
the
time
product that you're
creating an
crowdfunding.
audience and sending them to get it.
Yeah.
It's here. Go buy it right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Like-
you could always crowdfund like a special edition with.
And that's fine. And then you can charge the bigger price.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're getting a quality book. Like,
You have like a
Compare-
disposable way to get into it, and then for people who want to collect it and are willing to pay money for something that's a substantial value, you can do a crowdfund.
Exactly.
obviously the volume mattered on these Doug Tenaple books, but when
Mhm.
I spent the same amount of money on this as I did a floppy comic,
It
Yeah.
hurts your feelings.
as good as that floppy comic may or may not have been, I've never said in public what I think of it. But
Yeah.
not this one, but the Earthworm Jim launched the cow. I bought both of those at the same time, so you can kind of get the gist of what I'm saying. And I have this, and it looks fantastic, right?
Well, like I know something that kind of got to me when Doug was doing those was like he's like, oh, all the bells and whistles. This is the art of it. I'm like, I don't really agree with that, But what makes that valuable to me is that it's durable and substantial. It's not a floppy. It's not, it's durable and substantial as a product, and it's a complete story, and it's a valuable chunk of story. It's not paying $30 for a 24-page book that goes nowhere.
And like Gary Shipman, like these are hardbacks. Now they're not bound the same way. They're not the same print quality as those, but they're really still pretty good hardback. And you get this one of my favorite literally my favorite comics I've ever read. I own this page. It's packed up right now. I need to get it up on the wall, but I own this page because this page means a ton to me. And like I literally cried when I read this. And I can point people to where they can buy this comic. It's on Amazon. You can go and buy it right now. It's why I run a commercial for it when I do my live streams, is because, hey, I put the link in the description. Go buy it, and Gary gets money. And I'm like, I want people to read it, and I can point them to it. And it's cost me about the same amount of money.
You know what else you can get right now is you can get in on Doug's deal for this giveaway that this whole stream is about.
People
How do they do that?
People don't want free stuff. They really
don't. They don't. Like when I offered the free drawing.
So
everybody's like, "Oh no, I don't want to back it out. I don't want to."
It's insane. It's insane. We need to just pick a really cool backer and just send them this free stuff.
I think so. I think with this, we just have to, every physical backer, you roll a die and you.
Yeah, we'll do
the
something.
The thing is you're gonna like randomly start putting them in people's stuff, and you're gonna get somebody. If you did that, you're gonna get somebody like, "I didn't want this. Why'd you send me this crap?"
Dude, I've done it.
I guarantee you that.
When I did Legends of
you gotta
Lone
give it to
Wolf,
somebody you know will appreciate it, though. Like, I don't know.
When I did Legends of Lone Wolf, I sent free posters, free everything. Well, the posters had to be folded, right? People got mad that their free poster they didn't know that they were going to get was folded.
Yeah.
I was like, that's fine. That's fine. I should have just said, well, send it back to me. Let's make them pay to send it to me.
Yeah.
So Gary, when he sends out his stuff, he'll put a track in it. And somebody got really, really upset about that. They like sent him a nasty message, like complaining, but like, oh, I didn't know this was Christian. I don't want this.
How
He's
dare
like,
you put
like
Jesus?
Like
get back.
something my dad would have done. Gripe about it.
You could put a dollar bill in there and somebody would complain about it.
I didn't want this dollar bill.
Did you guys hear my dog?
No.
No.
She just it sounded like a person. She went.
My cat. It looks like he doesn't want to eat again, which is frustrating me. I'm going to go get some more baby food and try to feed him that again.
Well, I'll just tell you guys. I don't know why I thought getting a puppy would be a good idea. It's like having a child.
She rambunctious.
Oh, dude, it's like I try to do dog things with both dogs at the same time. Sometimes I have to get my mom. I'm like, Mom, will you come down here and get one of these dogs so I can come to your house? So she has to come and get one of them.
I saw the video you did where it's like all the dogs having a face-off on your porch. And sort of fighting with each other.
Doug, if you want, I shared my screen that has a page that nobody's seen from the backup. So somebody might be on the fence about getting I think that you should label it Deluxe Edition next time, because I keep saying the Deluxe Edition. But if you get that Deluxe Edition, the highest tiered book.
Well, the hollow foil book, if it's got Brad's cover on it, the backup story's in it.
If it has Brad's cover on, it's got that backup story. Like, I designed these things to be in black and white, and I refuse to color them. I will refuse to color. No, I would, if Doug asked me to, I would color these in a classic style, and I'd make them look retro. But the idea of these is like, this is a hybrid of the things that I like: black and white comics, classic looking stuff, designed to be in black and white or to be appealing in black and white, and then mixed with a sort of manga look to it a little bit. And do the speed lines, do some fun stuff.
See, I like it. I like it a lot.
You know what never works that I'm glad you're not doing is when they try to do like, oh, let's make this a manga-sized comic and we're going to make it black and white. and they just take like the colored word and switch it to black and white mode, and it looks like photocopied.
Yeah, yeah,
It looks
that's bad.
awful.
This Marvel Essentials, oh, it's brutal.
Ugh,
It's almost unreadable.
yeah.
It's
That's
Because
lazy.
what I like that you're doing is you're using the tones for the background, and then like there's the dark blacks, and it looks like it works in black and white. It doesn't look like it was made for color. It is.
like it's influenced by things like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or
Yep.
PandaCon, stuff that was in black and white and meant to Bone, things that are meant to be in black and white.
Yeah.
And it's influenced by, funny enough.
You know what?
Easier to take something that was meant for black
Manga.
and white and make it color later. But even then, I've seen like where people have colorized manga, and it very rarely appeals to me.
What I like about this is that you should see the way I wrote the script for him on this. Um,
I like those last three panels at the bottom, how it's one scene, but it's also not, because
Yeah,
it's
it's-
like you see him running, the wolf running to the
but
other side.
the best thing
Yeah.
about writing the script was that I just I wrote page 1 and I wrote what I want to happen on that page. Page 2, I wrote what I want to happen on that page. That's how I scripted the whole thing. I didn't actually write an actual script.
I like working that way. And the other way that I've enjoyed working is from Skinny's breakdown. So now that I've drawn things for 3 people, you and Skinny, and one other person who writes in full script, I much prefer this. And like essentially, the Psychotron backup, I think you might have went panels.
It
But-
was probably full script because I'd wrote it before.
Yeah, but this I love this. Like page 1, tell me what happens, give me the dialogue or whatever if there's dialogue in it, and then it's like Marvel method a little bit.
So that's what me and Eric started doing. Eric, the first Psychotron script, full script. I mean, it's hardcore full script. So was the Lone Wolf 1 and 2, hardcore script. I don't like doing that, but I trust you and I trust Eric, so it makes it easy for me because I know you guys aren't going to do something. And some artists, you have to hold their hand and walk them through, and that's what the script is for. It's like, here, I'm holding your hand, but don't talk to me. It's like I give you every move to make. Some people can't just, do stuff on their own.
Right. And I don't know. I don't know. I forgot what I was going to say.
I will tell you when I want a splash page, though. I'll be
I
like, this page
enjoy,
is a splash
like,
page.
I think, well, here's what I was going to say. I really am grateful for Skinny. Not just saying this because he's suddenly appeared, but that Ralph comic and him sending me those breakdowns. Like, I offered to draw you guys things for free at the time because I just wanted to draw something. And Skinny was like, heck yeah, here's a script. Here's the breakdowns. Draw it. And I was like, now I got to do it. And that pushed my art forward so much, in that I was like, finally had to complete something. And like, if I hadn't drawn it before and I didn't know how to draw it, I better learn and I better do it. And it's like, obviously super different now, my art in that compared to what I'm doing now. But had I not done that, had Skinny not given me the chance, and then let me do the little chick track style comic for the Otis Stein campaign, I'd never be at this point where my stuff actually looks good without that. And then the Psychotron backup, by that time I feel like I was okay, and then doing that, like now I feel like, yeah, I'm not just getting favors from friends to draw things.
Dude,
yeah,
you're like
really
on a
cool.
whole nother level right here with this backup story.
Man, I've been responding to you guys and didn't realize that my mic was muted.
I was
That's so
wondering why
funny.
you
I'm
were-
wondering,
I-
like,
You weren't even on the stream for a while.
Well, yeah, I sent Doug a message. Mrs. Skinny had kidnapped me to go to Subway with her and stuff, and I was like, she's hangry. I gotta go. But yeah, I was actually saying earlier, the only reason I really like draw it out instead of writing is because I'm lazy. I have a lot more fun drawing stuff out than sitting there trying to, spend 20 minutes trying to describe the way this couch looks, like
Perfectly legitimate. I mean, all you need to do is communicate what you want, and if that's the way you can do that best, go for it.
I mean,
well, Fly Fox might agree, but I've always had this, idea in my head that artists work on a visual medium. So why would I send them a novel that they may misinterpret? Because they're not writers. They're not. They don't. I'm not saying they're stupid, but they're not going to have the vocabulary that we do. Like it just seems like a better idea to me, at least, to work on the same level as them. To say, okay, this is exactly what I want, because you can say, okay, well, like cars, for instance, like if you get like an artist in the UK, they call their trunks or whatever bonnets instead of a trunk or a boot or
well, they call
whatever,
pants is underwear, and trousers is pants.
Yeah.
I mean,
First
there's
time I said
of,
pants to someone from the UK, they're like,
panty didn't mean butt.
And I don't know. I mean, I'm not knocking people who do descripts. Just me personally, it always seemed counterproductive to me, because I always felt like when I did write a script, I would ask for more corrections because of more misinterpretations.
I will say that it was probably helpful to draw the Psychotron back up for Doug with the more full script, and it got me. I'm much better at developing a page and laying it out because I had that. And there was things I changed, and I deleted a panel, or I combined two or whatever. But had I not had that, I don't think I would have grown as fast. Now I'm a lot more comfortable with it, where basically, like, I can read a sentence here of one of these pages we've seen on the script if you want, Doug, so people can get an idea of what it is. But it's like, page 1, Wolf is walking through the woods. He's carrying a bag full of gear. Now, I'm lazy. I didn't want to draw the bag full of gear. Doesn't matter, because I drew a cool splash page with guns. So, like, is Doug going to realize I didn't put the bag of gear? Maybe, because we're talking about it. But page 2, Wolf sees something in the distance. He makes his way closer to it. It's a white wolf caught in a trap. He makes his way over to the wolf. So, like, that's all I get. And then I put it in, and I develop the page, and I make it how I want. And I say things with the art. Like,
and there's a benefit to that as well. Like, a lot of artists, too, they really suck with paneling. Can I say that?
It's true.
I mean, a lot of their paneling, like, there's that one book that the dude did that was really, like, formatted weird, but, like, the whole book was nothing but, like, what was it, 2x3 panels on pages. So you had 6 panels for every page. It was like that the whole book, and it was just so boring. And
yeah, the one where the people got all mad because there was like, it was the thing printed onto it, like the address printed straight onto the book. What is that one you're talking about?
Oh no, that was something entirely different. This one was like, it was a reprint of something, but like, they formatted it to where it had like almost nearly like 3 inches pure black borders on all the pages and everything. It was just such a weird book. It was that it was one of those High School of the Dead or something like that. I don't think it's the one that Eric Kent was involved with. It was another one. I think it's like Art Thiebert or somebody like that.
Art Thiebert, yeah.
But it was just really strange how that book was set up.
When I do Peter the Problematic Person, let me pull up a page of it. Because I'd be interested to... Ultimately, it's for webtoons, right? So it's drawn differently. Let's see, where's it? This page has come out, so we'll do this page. But I do every page is in these 6 panel grids, and I'm unlikely to change that up just because it is easy to know how to format it. And
well, I mean, that's acceptable because that's that, like you said, that's for your webtoons thing, and that's kind of a format like for the funny pages, you know, that. But a full book being like that.
Oh, it will be if I print that. I'm not
Well,
gonna.
I mean, if you print it like that, but that's not what you're not taking a comic and making it the most bland and boring thing you can possibly
No,
think
and
of.
I also try to design the page. This one's a lot of information on this page, but I also try to design the pages. This one came out this uh, earlier today, but like you can have things go across the panels. Just because you have that grid doesn't mean you can't make this into a widescreen panel by doing that. Or you could combine them. But the idea is that it's easier for me to do this and then format it for webtoons. But I also think that if it looks good, like let's take the colors out. You know, you design it in black and white for it to look good, and then people don't think about how it's formatted because the design is solid of each individual panel. Whereas these guys are drawing books that they're designed for the color to describe the form and to do all the hard heavy lifting, and they don't look good when they're in a format like this. It's like you go back to these books, and yeah, they change up the panel layouts more than these old ones, but they're just squares and rectangles, and they just, you know, there's no crazy layouts in these. They just keep going. But they're solid. Each panel is solid on its own.
I do like that one page that you were showing of the lone wolf with how you went like there was like maybe 3 or 4 panels, and then the 5th panel was actually just like like the background of the entire page. I like that. That's really cool.
Well, I think
I like when I see stuff like that.
I think this is fun, but I also think about these things when I'm drawing it, not to get too analytical of it, my own art. But you have these panels, so you're seeing the sequence, and then you get to this last one. This is supposed to be the impact moment. You got to conserve a splash page, and I don't want to just throw up some random picture. So it's almost like the next panel in the sequence would be, well, that's not what I wanted. Right here, right? So like you go this way, and here's the panel, but then it's open. So you are still getting the progression, but then it just so happens that this panel is completely open.
I thought that was really cool.
And then it also suggests something about, I think, one of the reasons why I liked this design and why I stuck with it was because the wolf is sort of boxed in here, but there's also a lot of freedom. Like he's not constrained by the panel and a box, but he is still sort of boxed in. So he's both free and not free at the same time. I thought that was kind of a cool deal. But maybe I'm just pretentious.
So I just had a dude that I used to work with last year. He sent me a message on Facebook begging for money.
So he heard you were making comic books.
So I ignored him.
Millionaire.
I ignored him. You know, he works the same place I do. He knows I don't make and so he just now sent me a message. Goes, hey man, last year I sent you a message asking you for money and you didn't even respond. You're not a real friend. So I just said, dude, see ya, and blocked him.
Oh, okay, you know.
Sorry, that's like 2 things from work that have tried to ruin my vibe tonight.
Yeah, it's really gay when stuff like that happens, man. That's why.
That's why we should all quit our jobs and live in a commune.
That's why I don't like. I've always had problems when I tried to hang out with people I worked with.
Well, I don't hang out with people, and I don't know why I ever added him on Facebook. In fact, I don't remember approving
Oh yeah,
his
that
ad
too. Yeah.
request.
I usually typically won't add coworkers to like my social media or anything either. I just, pardon the French, but I don't shit where I eat, man. I only want to deal with those people when I'm getting paid.
Yeah, exactly.
If
But
I'm
anyway,
not getting paid, like even like off the clock, if they're trying to call me up, I'm not, no voicemail. Sorry.
yeah, that's me too. I
It's
should
so
have.
strange. We're one of the very few cultures that actually allows that, from what
Allows,
I understand.
allows what?
Like, like over in Europe, like if your job calls you like off the clock, like on your off time, like they're more than likely to answer and cuss you out for wasting their time and calling. I don't know. It's just I've been talking to other folks and like there's a lot of things that Americans let a lot of like businesses get away with. Like another one is like
We've been
tips.
conditioned to it.
And like tips is another one because like, for most part overseas they actually pay their servers and waitresses a fair wage and everything so they don't tip over there. It's not customary because
Some
they're
places it's an
already getting
insult.
paid. Yeah.
Japan, it is. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I know I've dated girls that got tips and made way more than what they would have made.
Oh, that's why I
Yeah.
have no sympathy for anybody crying about that. I was a
Yeah.
cook, so I was sitting there and I would have these servers, these beautiful girls, honest to God, but they're not very bright. But they'd be sitting there telling me, I only made $300 this week, or I only made $300 tonight. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, that's almost my entire week's paycheck
Yeah.
because they don't share tips with the cooks or anything like that, We get paid hourly. You know, but we didn't get paid crap. Like the servers were the ones making the most money. Hell, half the time the servers were making more money than the managers.
Yeah. Because people most our culture tips well. I even
And
I even tip at Sonic. They bring my
they,
stuff out.
Well, like nowadays, like if you go anywhere, just like Subway or whatever, if you pay with a card, that screen has a "Do you want to leave a tip?" And there's always that implied like you better leave a tip.
I don't leave a tip at Subway.
I don't like it. I'm like I'm gonna pay cash at those
I don't
places, so
go
I
to
don't have to
Subway
get
at
the
all.
question.
Yeah, I will
I'm
say
not
that's the thing.
and
I don't go to fast food anymore. I go to Sonic and I'll get me a lemon water, and that's it. Because
but I'm
I'm too fat to eat.
Not judging anybody. I just don't like Subway.
I prefer Quiznos, honestly.
Quiznos
There's not that
even
many
exist
Quiznos
anymore?
here anymore. Yeah, they've pretty much
They closed them all down here years ago.
There was
I haven't had Quiznos in forever.
It's
Because
like
they
when I
were
hear
toasting their subs before they did. They started to do that at Subway. But another one I like is actually, was it Jersey Mike's?
Mm,
See, I live in a small town. We got a Subway, a McDonald's, Dairy Queen, and Taco Bell. You pick one. That's where all you
Hey,
got.
do you have fried
We
cheese
got
curds
Sonic
at your
too.
Dairy Queen?
Do what?
Does your Dairy Queen have fried cheese curds?
Yes.
Oh, that's
Those
a
are
good
good.
Dairy Queen then.
Yep.
The ones in Alabama didn't have the fried cheese curds, man.
Now,
The only
did
place
We have the old trashy Dairy Queens, and then we have the new fancy ones, and the menus differ.
did those Dairy Queens have gravy with the chicken strip baskets or ranch?
I'm not sure. I
We
never
had-
got the chicken strip.
We had
basket.
gravy. That's how you know a good Dairy Queen. You don't want ranch with your chicken strip basket. You want gravy.
Well,
there are Firehouse subs around here. I looked it up, and all the Quiznos are way out on the.
I like Firehouse subs, but I don't like the weird aftertaste they leave.
Firehouse subs is kind of weird. Like every time I go in there, there's just I feel like I walked into the set of a movie or something like that. Like there's just something about like the way they have their menus and everything set up. It just I don't feel like I'm in reality when I'm in a Firehouse subs.
The bidding on this fine painting, oil painting here, and ink and oil painting starts at $300. So, if anybody wants to bid on that, they may pay me $300 for that. No, nobody's going off in the chat. Thought we were supposed to be grifting. Isn't that what streams are all about?
Yeah, I mean, I can't even give stuff away, so I don't know how you expect to sell
Right.
anything.
No, now they want it. How they're clamoring now. Oh yeah, this drawing that I did.
Hey, I guess maybe the next person who backs, I'll give them one of these covers here. This should be safe for you, huh, Doug? They're clothed. I'll give them one of these. These are pretty cool by Keith Garvey. These are actually pretty collectible on the market. These have resale value. It's not my IP that has the resale value.
I'll also throw in this John Wayne painting for only $100 more if you bid on the Steven Starlight painting.
John Wayne. Well, guys, I wanted to get off here in a few minutes to take this dog out.
I hadn't had anything to eat today, so I need to get something to eat.
I'm also hungry, but I'm also on a diet, so I can't eat anything.
That's crazy. Dave says in the Northeast, our Dairy Queens are only open in the summer and don't offer hot food. Holy cow!
So, like, it's just the
I
Dairy
mean,
Queen, like
I almost
with
never
blizzards and
get
stuff?
food from Dairy Queen.
I mean, I
Well,
don't,
I
I don't
mean,
buy
they're
hot
frustrating.
food, but
That kind of makes sense because, like, didn't they, like, elect a
snow
guy with, like, brain damage to be a
Yeah, but they've
senator?
replaced him with a completely different guy now that looks somewhat similar.
I don't like the new setup of Dairy Queen. I liked the old, like you know where to sit in there. You just walk in. There's a little counter. where You can look at the deli bars, and then you order your
Yeah.
food or ice cream, and you go eat outside. I mean,
With
I
no
like-
parking, and
Do you guys
the
remember,
drive-through can
like,
only handle like 2 cars before you hit the street.
the
Yeah,
red and white metal slides that they would have at a lot of them, too?
oh, we didn't have those. Well, I mean,
Oh.
you know, Tucson ones didn't have that. Can you? Did that?
Oh, well, yeah, you guys would, like, cook on those. But maybe Doug remembers them. Like, some of the Dairy Queens had, like, these big red and white slides, like a
And
play area.
I've
Not a
only
play
seen, like,
center, but they would often have, like, a
Dairy
play
Queen.
area outside with,
None
like,
of
a couple
ours
of
did
benches
now.
and stuff.
McDonald's had a play area, and Burger King and Crossville had a play area, but Dairy Queen never did.
I'm just astonished. I mean, obviously, I live in Arizona, so why would Dairy Queen be seasonal? But that just blows my mind.
We have snow cone, like brick and mortar snow cone places that are open all year round here. There's like a chain, which is very bizarre.
I'll just tell you, I'll eat ice cream in the snow. I don't care.
We have EG's.
Oh, I miss EG's.
Yeah, they do.
had really good slushies, man. Do they still do, like, the good flavor of the month or whatever?
Well, of course they do. And when we say slushy, people might get the wrong impression of just how good these are. They're not like a 7-Eleven
like-
slushy by the end where you're like, ugh,
They are really good,
terrible.
man.
No, they're so
Man.
good. Oh, they're so ridiculously good. And I can never move anywhere else because I don't want to give up my EG's.
Only
Remember
Doug on his
Walmart?
diet talked about this stuff.
Remember when Walmart had the food area and you could get the ices? Did you guys ever get those?
Yeah, the old school.
That was always
Yeah, always
Kmart
those-
and Target here. Walmart, I don't remember. If
When I
Walmart
first
was-
started working at Walmart, I had to
Yes, they
clean the
did.
grease traps out of those back in the day.
I miss the old Walmart and Target little food courts rather
Yeah.
than now they have
before
like
it was like McDonald's or Subway.
or
Yeah.
McDonald's or something in there. But those, like you'd walk into a Walmart or a Target and it just smell like popcorn as soon as you walked in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the good old
It
days.
smelled
When
like
Target-
it smelled like popcorn and fair food.
Yep. Man, times have changed.
See, the best thing too at ours there was a big magazine stand right next to it. So we'd go over there, and Mom and Dad occasionally would get an icy, and we'd look at comic books, and we'd get
Yeah.
those 3-packs of comics that were like $5. Yeah,
I
and
think-
that's if we got good grades, we could get comic books in an icy.
I think comics must have been out of the grocery stores early here or something because I never saw a comic book in the magazine rack ever in my life.
That was the only place I got them was with the little gas station up the street. I'd go get the Sonic comic every month. They had
I don't
quite a
remember.
few.
I don't remember ever seeing a comic book in the wild
Beyond a comic book
The
store,
grocery
the
stores and
only
Walmart.
place I ever saw comic books was at like Dollar General with the little like 2 or 3 packs
Yeah.
Yeah, but
of
how-
like X-Men or
I
something
got
like
one of
that.
those
guys.
once, but it was clearly like a pack they had left over from 1996 that they just threw out on the shelf to get rid of it.
How old are you guys?
I'll be
36.
35, so
See,
I'm probably the youngest one.
I
I'm
think I'm
39.
36.
34, so.
So like, it was like I'd say it's probably 94, 93 or 94 when they pulled them out of Walmart. Because I
I
was
still remember seeing them into like 90, 98, 99 in Walmart, but they were getting rarer and rarer by then.
yeah. See, our Walmart pulled them. I guess they didn't sell that well. I was probably the only dude in Jamestown, Tennessee, buying comic books, and all I was buying was the Archie Ninja Turtles
Yeah.
and the Archie Sonic series.
they probably never even sold comic books where I'm from because everybody's illiterate.
Yeah, they got pictures of Skinny. Hey, get me that there picture book. It's got that man with that big old snake on his shirt. And he
It's
does
got
the
that
things.
X lady with the boobies.
Get me that booby book where they fight in it.
My hero would have just been like, "Those got pictures. That's not a real book. You ain't really reading."
You can't read. You're stupid.
It's like whenever I would try to draw in class, or would we had free time in class in school. Like, no, don't draw. That's terrible. You can't draw. That's the
Oh, I
The
kept
worst thing
getting
you
in
could do.
trouble because I kept drawing like the Grim Reaper killing random people and stuff like that, and they were like, "He needs to go to counseling."
here.
And my dad was like,
I gotta take his
"Ma'am,"
dog out.
and my dad like looked at the teacher and he's like, "Ma'am, I used to draw like soldiers killing Vietnamese people when I was at school in the 70s. It's just a phase. It's what boys do." Like,
So I remember in middle school, I was reading Michael Crichton's Eaters of the Dead, and my teacher, she got all mad about it, and she told my parents, "Oh, he's reading this book," and my parents were like, "So?
well,
Like, you're mad because he's reading? Like what? Like they didn't care."
like if you watch that movie, what was it, Monster Squad? Like my dad was one of those kids. He grew up putting together the models, getting posters. He loved horror. So when he asked me, and I love horror too, what the hell you think we're gonna draw? Like roses and flowers and stuff? No, it's gonna be blood and gore. It's really cool stuff. But at the time, that was also like right after Columbine too. So I guess they were a little more antsy about people, being predisposed to violent behavior, I guess.
I was in high school when that happened.
But I never got in any fights or anything in school. I mean, there was a couple, but I shut them down really quick.
One Axel. One Axel. Come.
We had a McDonald's in Tucson that back when McDonald's actually were unique. It had this area where you could sit on these saddles in front of a mock saloon that was painted on a mirror in front of you, and there was a bar. And then the hallway back towards the bathroom was like going into a mine where on the wall, like it was like a mine, and there was a little mural on the side of the Hamburglar trying to escape to the mine and hide.
Down there. No, come on.
It was awesome.
Come here.
And they just tore it all down and built a generic McDonald's in place of it.
Come here.
I'm sorry. I'm
Sorry.
trying to listen to you, but like Doug's overpowering you, but
Yeah.
he happens to be telling Axel no at the right point. You'll be
No.
like, you know how this is? You hear Doug, no.
I'm not telling Axel though. You guys
Now
wouldn't believe
they're
this.
they're so generic and awful. But they used to be unique. Like there's one with the dinosaurs. You know that one's skinny, the McDonald's that has the dinosaurs in Tucson.
Yeah, I think I remember that one. That was pretty cool.
They were always pretty generic here. I mean,
The
in
best
terms of
store in
illustration.
Tucson, hands down, is Bookman. So,
Oh.
like all the way, man. Like that place was amazing. At least the
Just,
2 locations.
Well, hey, that Captain America book I showed earlier, got it at Buckman's. Basically,
Buckman's
any
is
comic book
awesome.
I have, from back
Are-
in the day. From
Are
Buffalo.
they still like having like little concerts and stuff in that like auditorium area, or are they still just like pretty
I
much just
imagine they do. I don't.
putting?
I haven't been in Tucson one in a long time, but I don't know.
Because
I've never seen it at the.
yeah, I know they were like letting bands perform in there for a hot minute, and that was really fun. But then it's like they just kind of said screw it and threw a bunch of antiques in there, like an antique showroom. And I was like, oh well, that kind of sucks. It was really nice having like the
I don't
bands
know
and
that
stuff.
they do anymore, but I like going to Bookman's. Bookman's is cool.
So you
I
said-
guess they got rid of the bands because everybody was quote unquote reading, and I'm like, it created a good atmosphere.
The one on Ina and Thornydale, they would have singer-songwriter types in there, but I never heard a band. But it was smaller too than the one out east. The ones out east. I should say.
So I'm trying to. You guys wouldn't believe this. Axel's 75 pounds. Sasha's probably 10 pounds at the most. She torments him and will not let him come in the house. So I'm trying to tell her no because he's going to lay on his dog bed that she kicked him off of and was biting him. So I'm telling her no and like pulling her away. So that's why you guys just hear me say no.
Oh,
So now Axel for the first time in 2 weeks is getting to lay on his bed. And Sasha's mad.
she wants to go in there and poop on him.
What she'll do is she'll go over and bite him and bark at him until he comes back in this room and lays down, and he'll lay in here until I put her in her crate. So I've been trying to teach her that she can't treat him that way, and it's probably my fault because I think he tried to establish dominance over her, and I told him no, and he's such a good dog that he actually won't do that, and so now she thinks she's the dominant one. She's trying to exert her dominance over him. Like I said, I don't know why I thought getting a puppy would be a good idea. It's like I got a child.
Animals are great, man. Like I was telling you, like sometimes it's like God's testing to see how many animals we end up with.
Well, I'll just tell you, man. Every day this week, I get aggravated for a few minutes, but every day this week, if I've come in, I've been in a bad mood, I sit down. You give it 2 minutes max, I'm laughing. I'm laughing my butt off. This dog cracks me up. If I go let her out of her crate, she acts like I could put her in her crate right now and walk in here and walk right back in there and let her out. She acts like it's like we've been separated for 10 years and she's never been more happy to see me, trying to jump on me and kiss me. I don't understand how somebody can have an animal and not be happy.
Well, I mean, if they have a Chihuahua, I can completely
Yeah,
understand.
That's a rat. I understand that.
Oh man, is that Wheaton?
No. It's Jonathan Frakes.
Oh, okay.
Star Trek: Next Generation crossover with X-Men. It's unreadable.
I've
I
heard-
haven't gotten past the first.
They,
chapter.
the IDW has been doing Star Trek crossing over with everything in the past few years. There's like Star Trek and Planet of the Apes,
Did you
the
guys...
Primate Directive,
I have.
the Primate Directive.
Dude,
and that's the best one I read actually.
That sounds
There's
like something
actually-
that I would make up as a joke.
Like Star
they
Trek.
do a lot of Planet of the Apes crossovers too, because I remember not too long ago. Well, not too long. It's
Did
like
you guys
probably
ever-
8 years? It's like Planet of the Apes crossing over with King Kong.
Yeah, I read that one.
Did you guys ever read the old school? What's the old school DC Star Trek comics? I liked those.
Yeah, I have the that. They for a while before they realized how dumb it was, they were selling DVD ROMs with
I remember seeing that in the store.
the,
and everything.
every comic ever
So-
made up to that point. And they did a Star Trek one, which I have. They also did Marvel did ones of X-Men, Fantastic Four, the Hulk, and I wish I could go back in time and buy them because now they're like super pricey.
Yeah.
But literally every X-Men comic made up until the early 2000s. In
So
PDF,
all the good ones, pretty much.
yeah, in PDF form. So
Anything you don't want anything
Printable.
after that, anyways.
just print them out, bind them yourself. Would have been great. Now I gotta go take individual pictures from read comics online to make my own books when I could have just had PDFs of them. Terrible.
Man, I wish I had those Star Trek comics. No joke. I've been wanting to read some of those.
There was a
I
humble
suppose-
bundle a while back of Star Trek books. It's mostly all the new crap, but they had one that was an older one. I don't know if it was DC or when Marvel had it, but it was actually pretty good.
They're good. They were good when DC had them. Well, the ones I read were. And I was like, this is almost like having more episodes of the show to watch.
I like it because when they draw the art in those, they're not just like tracing production photos. They actually drew stuff.
Yeah, and it actually looks like the characters, but it's
Looks like the characters, and it actually feels like a comic and
Yeah.
not just a bunch of
exactly.
ugly photos put together.
Now you better be good to your brother, or I'll come over and spank you.
We,
Trust me, I ain't never spanked this dog. Probably never will. I'll get stern though and say no in a real stern voice and point like this.
I'm sharing the screen with them on.
Man, I love Star Trek: The Next Generation.
So it's like they just took a copy of the comic and they just took out the staples and scanned them. It's
Oh wow!
That is so cool, man.
absolutely fantastic. It's still got the old.
The only thing I don't like about that is that had Dr. Pulaski in it, didn't it?
Yeah, but this is it changes. So it goes. This is the first issue. Like I have them all. Like I'm telling you, every single Star Trek comic. So
Now they're
I
all
remember
on
seeing one of those
PDF.
at half price books for
Yeah.
like $10. I should have got it.
Could
back
I
then.
could I send you a flash drive or something and you put all those on?
I suppose.
He's like, not officially.
I mean, I'll
but
pay DC like $1 to license them from them.
I
To
mean, we
read.
could figure something out. But
Wow,
but
they
even-
really did just scan beat up copies of
Yeah,
it.
it's fantastic. It's
That's crazy.
That's
like
cool.
my
They got
guess
the-
is
That's from the DVD. That's
Yeah,
Is
those
this
are the
right
ones I
from-
was talking about. Not
Mhm.
that's not the DC, but I mean earlier when I was talking about the Golden Key books.
Yep. I love having them. I like to look at them for inspiration.
I could tell that you were inspired by these when you were going through a second ago. Like those
Look at this red image here. This one. That's. Yeah. I don't know, man. I wish I had bought the X-Men one back in the day, but
I like it because it keeps all the ads and stuff.
Yeah,
I know.
me too. So it's like
That's
a
the
real
best
book.
part.
Because like I found a bunch of old video game magazines I used to read when I was a kid, where people would scanned and uploaded them, and the ads are the best part of them. Seeing all the
Yeah.
crazy ads from 1992.
That's what I like about old comic. I mean, like when I buy one, I love those the old stupid ads in them, especially
Yeah.
from the '90s when ads were extra stupid.
I remember when they started doing the collections of the old Sonic comic, maybe 10, 15 years ago. But they recolored them in the laziest way. Like they added a little, like a white airbrush effect to all the highlights and shading. It looks so ugly and not like the original
Yeah.
crummy printing.
Well, that's like a lot of these reprints of like the old '50s and '60s comics. They put some really bad colors over them and they're really sloppy and
I heard it's like something about how they can't reproduce the colors and how they print stuff now, supposedly. So they recolor them in Photoshop, and it just looks so ugly.
They look
The thing
really
is, they
bad.
can just do flat colors and put a yellow layer over it at 10%, and it'll look good. That's it. It would be fine. They could make it look good. They just don't.
Yeah.
They're so. Boggles my mind. I don't know. It's the same type of people who, like, was looking at the one of those DC collections that's in black and white, like I have, like the Marvel Essentials, but DC. I was looking at the one for like the romance comics, and I was looking at the reviews on Amazon. It's long out of print, but I was looking at the old reviews, and some idiot was on there saying, "Oh, I thought I was buying a comic book, not a coloring book." Like that's the same type of comic.
Oh,
book.
please.
One's like that.
There's a lot of people who are like, it's not a comic if it's not color.
It's like, you got to be kidding me.
I don't even listen to people about comics, to be completely honest.
Probably
Like,
a smart thing to Smart
I
way to
just
do
do
it.
what I want to do. Like people are like, well, because like my comics kind of like color and black and white.
Yeah.
And it's like a mix. It kind of shifts between them just because that's just what I want to do. But I couldn't imagine being so stupid to call a black and white comic a coloring book.
You're just
It's
so
just
dumb. Like that's the type of person who goes every Wednesday and gets the same Spider-Man book they've been reading.
Yeah.
I
Why are
mean,
you?
there's certain books that are in black and white that I look at, and there's so much going on the page, and it's so busy that I do wish that it were in color sometimes because
Yeah.
I have a really hard time figuring out what's what sometimes with some of these black and white artists, and
That's the thing,
they
it's
are
not-
very skilled. But I feel like, ooh,
They're very skilled at like drawing lots of detail, but not skilled in designing it to where it's readable or you understand what you're looking at.
yeah.
Like I see that a lot, where it's like everything in the background is super detailed and everything in the foreground is just as detailed, so you can't separate them. I'm like, you failed there, buddy.
You know, honestly, I don't really care that much about detailed backgrounds anymore. I
Look at these.
like
Look at-
some.
Look,
Unless
Pop
the
up.
moment requires detail.
Yep.
I mean, just use as much detail
Look
as you
at
need
all
to tell
these
that part of the
backgrounds.
story.
half of them are just solid colors.
Yeah,
Or
and
it's like a little
Because
bit.
what's
something
important in
that
these in these panels is the expressions on the faces. It's not
Exactly.
what's going on around them in that
It's
particular
so,
panel.
nobody reads this, and nobody ever read this comic and thought like, man, I wish this had a big old giant picture of Kirk on it, like the whole, a big old action pose, like in an image comic from the '90s. No, they read it; it was readable. They looked through it, and they never thought, oh, the panel work's not dynamic. No, they change it up, but it's all based on the 6-panel grid. Where they might put a single panel down here, but it's still the 6-panel grid, like going through there, and then you have this splash page, and it stands out. It looks cool. Or
I think that
image.
comic book right there looks fantastic. I love everything about it.
Yeah. I'm so glad I bought this when I did. You might be able to still pick this one up for cheap. I don't know because
I
it's
have
not,
it in my like Amazon wish list I put in there 20 years ago or something. It's
I did
not
that
the
with
same
the-
price.
I remember seeing the X-Men one at like Office Max or something, Office Depot, one of those stores. My mom was shopping for office supplies or something. My brother and I were walking around looking at the software, and we wanted it so bad, and we could not convince her to buy it for us. And I wish I had done everything I could have done to get that, because it would have just been so fun to have it.
Would you have stolen it? Like, if that was your only option to obtain
I
it,
have,
would
I
you
have
go back in
since
time
contemplated
and
how I could have done.
convince
I
little
have-
Fly Fox to commit burglary?
I will not lie. I at the time and since have thought of ways I could have shoplifted that and got away with it, but I didn't do it.
I mean, even at the time, I don't
didn't see
think
the
they
big
even
foot.
had like all the security
How long ago
measures
was
they
it?
do today. It probably would have been really easy, man.
Oh, this one. Not the Bigfoot. Looks like a gorilla or something.
I don't know. I might start getting Star Trek comics now, guys. You've just ignited. Okay, I went from buying guns. I got really back into guitar pedals. I've been buying guitar pedals. I'm working on this guitar setup. Now I've got to get Star Trek comic books. I'm not even kidding. Like, I
What you
want
gotta
them
get
so
now
Problem is, I think
a
most of them
guitar
are not
pedal.
that great.
that the effect is themed after Star Trek, like a phaser or something
I probably
like that.
the one I use. Like, see, that's the thing. I actually don't need any pedals. The Helix that I use, it's what it is. It's a modeler. It models any effects you can think of in any amp. I don't actually need pedals, but I'm trying to recreate this feeling and this style of playing that I was doing back 10, 15 years ago. So I don't actually need it. So maybe I should just sell those pedals I just bought and invest in Star Trek comic books.
Oh, well, you got to buy one more thing, though, Doug. You got to go out there and you got to find a really cool guitar that looks like the Enterprise.
All right, I got to take off. Sorry,
Yeah.
you guys later.
I probably need to, too. See ya.
Take it easy. Yeah, I
Actually,
looked up that
He
that
didn't
thing
even
you can
stay
get.
around long enough for a goodbye kiss, man. Just
Yeah, DVD's talking about it goes for $50 now, used on the aftermarket because out of print. Should have
Well,
got it when it was $10 at half price books 15
that's
years ago,
still
like
not
everything
awful.
else.
Is it on? You think they got it on eBay though?
Yeah, on eBay it's $80 though.
I'm
Oh,
pretty
maybe on
sure
there.
it's probably on Pirate Bay.
Yeah, I mean if it's just a DVD or CD-ROM.
I assumed that you were going to be trying to collect like the physical comics.
Well, I mean, I would love to. Yeah,
It says
in all
over
honesty, I'd love
500
to.
issues up to 2002.
Star Trek: The Complete Comic Book
Collection.
Collection, 67 to 02, $53.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd almost pay that. Almost. Here's a one that's $40.
I want to get a T-shirt that says "Starve an Artist" by Mainstream. I guess I didn't
Sorry.
land very well.
I
Doug's
was
over
eating
here
this.
just looking at his prawn, his Star Trek prawn.
You can't see my phone.
No, we can't see anything.
I bet my dad would even read these because I almost think this is a bootleg. It looks funny.
Probably.
The back cover is pictures from the TV show. There's no comic book.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's just got the
I don't know.
cast.
I think if you get that, you're gonna find yourself more disappointed than you expect. 'cause
After
a lot of
spending
those comics
$40 on
were
it,
not
You're
very
just
good.
you're not even gonna get your Star Trek comics. You're just gonna get the ATF,
it's gonna get ripped
like
off.
dressed up as members of the.
Here's one that comes with a
Federation.
Spock, a Mr. Spock bank though.
Mr. Spock goes to the bank.
Now I've got to get this one. I ain't spending that much money on comic books.
Is he gonna like Vulcan pinch anybody like tries to steal your like $1.76 that you'll probably end up with in there?
Oh man, I just
You
wanna
got a
find-
3D printer, Doug. Just print a spot. Bang.
I could, dude. My printer. I have not run my printer in I don't know how long.
I'm
Like,
surprised you hadn't tried to print up like some coins or something to go along with your.
I only make dangerous stuff, Skinny. Like this push blade.
You could have given those away with your book.
Well, the thing is,
You still can.
the nozzle on this is screwed up, and
Oh,
I haven't fixed it.
dude, I bought one like a year ago, and I still haven't even used it.
I've
Like it
got-
still hasn't even been plugged in.
I've
For
got
Christ's
another
sake.
printer in my bedroom that my brother gave me. I could have two printers going all the time.
I just haven't had the room really to set it up. So I was
Oh.
hoping for us to be in a bigger spot.
Well, see, that's another thing here too. I've been trying to clean this house and get rid of some more stuff. Hey, where you going? Don't you bother me.
I just, well,
Sorry.
with me having cats and stuff, I don't have anywhere to put it right now where they wouldn't be able to get to it and mess with it, you know?
I'll be
Yeah. I had I put a bunch of
bother him.
books in a box and set them down on this chair my cats like to lay on. And I left the room, and I come back and cat's laying on top of them. I'm like, get off of that! Don't ruin my books.
I love my cats,
Don't.
but I also hate my cats.
Yeah,
No.
they are very messy.
No. No. Quit. If you're gonna be mean, you have to come on here and sit with me.
Carry out on delivery.
Honestly, Doug, this is probably gonna sound bad, but maybe you just got to put her to bed early a couple of times, like in her own kennel, and just be
Probably
like, "Well,
have
that's
to.
what you get."
Probably have to. What you doing, girl? You being a mean girl. You being a mean girl. Mr. Poopy, you want to come sit in my lap like this, buddy? Huh? Don't be mean to him. I'll put you to bed.
Yeah.
Hear it?
Yes.
That's the sound of adult male submission.
Hey, get her. Don't let her treat you like that.
But it's 2023, Doug.
Huh?
But it's 2023, Doug.
So I don't know when he sent this in the chat, but Dave said, "I gotta get Star Trek comics. Was there anything more geeky ever muttered?"
No.
In fact, there is. There was one time I was talking on a forum years ago, and I admitted to have read some Star Trek books, and there was something else. I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell you what else I was reading. It's going to be super nerdy. Like, nerdier than Star Trek books? I'm like, yeah.
They were Willow books.
They were printed very small.
I actually like the DuckTales comics, and IDW was doing some new ones.
Yeah, they did some cool ones.
And I collected those until I guess they canceled the series again.
Like new ones or reprinting all the old ones that everyone liked?
Oh, they were new.
They
new
did
ones.
both
They
though
were
for a
fun.
while.
I know they just said they're never going to reprint one of the old ones because they got canceled or something. Like how they're editing all the Goosebumps and Roald Dahl books to be more politically correct.
Yeah, because there were a lot where they were going to like Africa. They had like the dog kind of creatures, like the Beagles or whatever, or
Beagle Boys.
the Beagle Boys. Why am I thinking Beagley? What's Beagley?
Because the maid lady was Mrs. Beakley.
Mrs. Beagley, yeah.
Life is like an airplane.
We're in turd world.
I tried watching some of that new cartoon when it first came out. I don't know how I felt about it.
I only watched the ones that had Darkwing Duck on it, and I didn't really like the way they did Darkwing Duck.
Yeah, I only watched a handful of them. I remember there's one where they made they introduced a new rival to Scrooge and the other rich duck that was his enemy. And it was just like douchey
the Scottish one.
Yeah, it was this real douchey like Facebook. What's his name? Zuckerberg. It was basically Mark Zuckerberg, and they both teamed up against him because he was such an asshole. Which I thought was kind of funny.
I hadn't watched. I don't watch any new mainstream stuff for the most part.
I don't even.
I just.
I watch
Everything
Kid Kill.
sucks.
I've been like, there's a movie theater, and I drive by it almost every day at some point, and I keep seeing signs like, "Watch Ant-Man, Quantumania." I'm like, no,
Like,
thanks.
why?
And then I drive by, it's like Shazam 2, and I'm like, no thanks.
Yeah.
And then it's like John Wick 4, and I'm like, no thanks. And I don't even have anything against like John Wick, by the way. I love Keanu Reeves. I'll probably watch that movie once it hits streaming or whatever.
Just not exciting enough to go see it in a theater.
There is literally nothing coming out that has made me. I haven't even watched South Park.
You know, the only thing I've paid actual money to watch, I don't know how long, because I stream everything for free. The only thing I've paid money to watch in a long time, any movies, was I bought the My Hero Academia movies because they were on sale for $2 a piece. So I was like,
I saw the third one in the theater.
Now, the only thing I've actually gotten excited to watch was a short mini-series that came on the Apple TV or whatever. And it was called Blackbird, and it was based on a true story. But this drug and gun trafficker ends up, he's got the gift of gab, so the feds end up offering him, like, hey, if you go to this max security prison and get a confession out of this child killer, you know, we'll let you go free. And that's what it's about. It's a really good series, man. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. But, I mean, that's the only thing that I've been excited to watch. And even that, it hasn't been new. I think it's been out for maybe about a year, 2 years, or something like that.
And the only like current thing that I like is the Cobra Kai show, and it's about to end. It's the only like new TV show I get excited about.
And the last big franchise I actually got excited about, and I'm glad I did, was Ghostbusters.
Yeah, but have you seen what they're doing with the next one?
Well, they're doing a lot of different things. So, which one are you talking about?
The direct sequel to Afterlife's going to have a bunch of stupid crap in it.
Oh,
Like
is
Patton
it?
Oswalt.
Yep.
Huh. Huh. I still liked Afterlife,
I
but
did too.
they said that they're doing two live action movies, and they're also supposed to be doing two cartoon movies.
See,
as
that's
well.
what I've been saying they needed to do. Is after they did so, they made so much money with that Spider-Man one. I was like, they need to just start doing animated Ghostbusters movies because they've done cartoons before. They're a lot of fun. You don't have to worry about actors being dead. You don't have to worry about a lot of stuff.
But, and then before Ghostbusters, the only one that I got excited about was Bill and Ted 3.
Yeah, I liked that.
Did you like Bill and Ted 3?
Hell yeah, dude! I went to the theaters to see it again.
I didn't like it very much because I loved the
Why?
first two. Because it just it felt really rushed. And it just didn't feel like the old ones.
The only thing I didn't like about it is they had that one rapper in it, and I was like, what is he doing here? Or whatever at the very end. I was like, what? But then I just kind of wiped it off. I was like, well, that is like a new generation of music, so I don't want to be an old man.
Yeah.
But I still liked it. I mean,
I didn't hate it. I just felt it felt kind of rushed to me.
I didn't get that impression. Like it kind of felt cheesy, and the effects were kind of goofy and everything, and it wasn't the best thing in the world. But the other movies weren't either. There's just more of the same, so I was happy. I still like it better. I hate to say it, but it's like 2, 3, and 1. It's like the order of my favorite Bill and
2.
Ted movies now.
Bogus Journey is one of the best movies ever made.
I love that one. Although the first time I
vibe
tried to
of it.
watch it as a kid, I got scared.
Me
by when
too.
he
I
took
got
off
scared.
his face to show the robot underneath.
Yeah.
But
I
after
got scared
that,
when
I
they
loved
died.
it. Yeah. And they just spit loogies on him.
3 was so funny though, man. Like I was laughing so hard.
The Dave Grohl part
they
was
ended
really
up-
funny.
Have the marriage counseling, and they're like both going to counseling at the same time.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
funny.
I love that they. It's like, well, we ran out of fathers for Missy to marry. Let's have him marry his little brother.
Yeah, that was funny too.
Yeah, that was a funny movie though. I enjoyed it. And the daughters didn't feel forced either. Like that didn't feel like a political move.
Yeah.
Like they didn't play the girl power. The girls basically acted like they did in the earlier movies. And because they could have easily done like this, girls who like resent their fathers and stuff like that, but they didn't even go that route. They went the route of like these families
really-
love each other,
yeah,
and
they
even
really care
with like
about
the
their
marriage counseling, it was just the wives just were kind of annoyed that they can't do anything without one another. Where in like most Hollywood movies, like the teenager would have been like pissed off and resentful and stuff like that, and the parent would be like stupid and ignorant and misunderstanding, and the wife would probably be sleeping with somebody, and
You know one
but
thing I
they
hate.
didn't do any of that. They just had a really normal, loving family, and I think that was one of the best parts of that movie.
Yeah, I hate Hollywood movies where they try to make it cool for the kids to hate their parents, or their parents just to be really stupid. I think that I don't know. I just don't like that. I think that's subversive in a way. They're trying to subvert normal family standards and make it cool for you to think your parents are stupid. Well, this guitar plays like poop.
No, I think it's just the player.
I was just playing that Gibson. It played a lot better. I ain't never had
Well,
this.
I'm just giving you shit,
I
dog.
figured you was skinny. I see this one. I got this one back in 2002. It was a graduation present from my mom and dad. And since then, it's had a pick guard replaced. It's had the pickups replaced. I had to replace the bridge. Had to replace electronics. I played this in most bands and most shows I was ever at, and my sweat rusted the bridge and the electronics and everything away. Like
Jesus.
the knobs got so corroded they wouldn't turn anymore. And I've still got the original pickups. They're just crusty all over. And this thing actually has a whole lot of fret wear. Like it really needs a fret job.
Yeah.
But it was an awesome guitar. I just need to get it set up. Sorry, I like the guitar. Guys, I think I'm gonna get off here though. I've been on here for 3 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I
And
didn't
sorry,
give away
I'm
nothing.
Plus 2 hours
hours
earlier.
earlier.
Yeah, I did a 2 hour stream earlier too. I almost forgot about that.
Yeah, and then like after your stream, I was like, I want to play some Spider-Man. And then I streamed myself playing Spider-Man. And then as soon as I got off, it's like, oh, hey, Doug's streaming. I want to hop on. And it was just nice that I had quit just in time to catch the beginning of your stream.
The thing about that stream was I was just going to stream for 5 minutes about a CD I found. And I fell into a nostalgia hole.
Dude, I swear to God, it felt like sometimes, and don't take this the bad way, it was just so surreal, but it felt like I was watching like an extras on a DVD of you going through your whole like, I don't know, the way you were like, and back then we were, and it was really cool, man. Like honestly,
I've had 2 or 3
you were,
people tell me that today. They was like, you need to do more streams like that. They was like, that was really cool.
And then you're like, but I went through everything.
Yeah.
What else?
So now if I go back through it, I'll have to break down. Maybe I can go back and break down every like music release that I was a part of or something. I don't know.
or maybe you could do like a video where you just play one of your songs that you had a hand in making, like at the beginning or whatever, and then you can go through and you can tell the story about the song, like who wrote it, how it was to record it, and then you've got a wealth of videos because if you do them like in singles like that, then you should have a lot of content.
Yeah, you're actually right because I could do like with that one band we did a 3-song CD, so the series could be on those 3 songs, and they could be several hours worth of content just in itself.
And you could even play it like on your videos in little chunks and not play it the whole thing, and then well, if you want to hear the full song, go check it out on Spotify or Amazon Music, whatever.
That's a good idea. I might start doing that. Because honestly, like, I can talk about comic books so much, but I don't have a big hand in the actual production of the comics. You know what I mean? I write the story and then I tell everybody to buy it. That's, I can't tell you about drawing it. I can't tell you about the art direction. I can tell you, well, I come up with the idea. I think, this guy wears underwear on his head, but that, but
Who
music,
doesn't?
But all this music, man, I just still remember a lot of it. It was good.
I
times.
really, at some point, I hope that you and I get together because I would love to team up with you to do like an audio comic for Otis at some point where it's like a bunch of different tracks to go over like a story.
Yeah, we need to.
Because I know you like those story albums too.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy those too. Like, that's why bands like Rush are some of my favorite bands because their entire album is like this long story. And Gorillaz even did that to a degree with like Demon Days. I love it when albums do that, where all the songs kind of like link up with each other, and it tells this one big overarching story.
See,
in
I
these
like
small
I
snippets.
love concept albums and albums with themes.
Is that what they're called? Concept albums?
Yeah,
I never knew what they were
Where-
called. I
where
was
it
just
tells a
like,
whole
where
story.
it's about a story.
well, I mean, like no joke. Before I ever made a comic book, I really wanted to do a book to go along with the Before the Crows CD. We threw the cover in there to break it up, but originally I came up with a story that connected all the original songs together. And I was like, dude, all these fit like this, and we could do a story like this. But, it was a little too ambitious for us at the time. Like now I could pull it off. I know I could, but then I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything about making a comic or a book to go with it.
Well, hopefully at some point you and I can team up for something fun
Yeah,
and put it out on vinyl too. That would be awesome.
I love vinyl.
I heard something where last year sales of vinyl steeply outsold sales of CDs.
Yeah, vinyl's on the rise again. Well, see, a lot of things too. If you buy a vinyl, it usually comes with a download code, so
Yeah.
you don't even have to listen to the vinyl. You can just collect it. See, I got the only Before the Crows album CD or
See,
vinyl.
anytime somebody's like, we need to save the industry, the only thing I do is usually just point to vinyls. And I'm like, well, those are still around.
Yeah,
So I'm pretty sure that comics will always be around.
but you know
even
who
if-
kept this stuff alive was these indie bands.
Yeah, it was guys like us.
Yeah, Small Brown Bike.
Because like I was even buying new albums on vinyl. The Presidents of the United States, their last album before they officially broke up for good this time. Kudos to you. I have that one
Millions
on
of
vinyl.
peaches. Sorry.
Which their breakup was just, they're old and they all have families.
Kind of
It
like
wasn't
REM when REM split up.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad blood thing. It was
Yeah.
just we're all old and we don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, we'll live off royalties forever.
Which is still a shame because I'm like, well, you guys could still be a studio band. Like,
Yeah.
come on. Like, still hop in the studio once in a while. But the front man, I forget his name, but he goes by like Casper Baby Pants now. But he does like kids music now, which is nice.
He
Hey,
came
hey.
out like Weird Al was doing a concert and started singing Peaches, and he came out with Weird Al, and they did Peaches, and then they did his version, Gump.
Yeah.
That one song.
He's a really cool guy because, like, even the kids' music thing, you could kind of see it coming if you listen to a lot of their music. I mean, they got that one song, like, about frogs, and then they got bugs and butterflies. And
That
all
makes you
their
think-
songs are pretty kid-appropriate.
That makes you think about John Redcord singing children's song. I want to brush my brains out.
Wait, what?
There's a hole in my pocket where my money
Money should go. There's a hole. And King of the Hill. Well, guys, I'm